You keep trying to be kind. To everyone. To those who ignore you, use you, drain you. But Marcus Aurelius would tell you, kindness without strength is not virtue, it's surrender. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, listen not to sweet words, but to truth. The Stoic emperor's truth, that peace is not found in pleasing others, but in mastering yourself. Stop being kind. Start being just. Before we start, comment where you're watching from. Subscribe. Tomorrow's story is even crazier. You wake before dawn, and already the weight settles on your chest. Not the weight of blankets or the heaviness of sleep still clinging to your limbs, but something else entirely. Something that lives in the space between your ribs, pressing down with the familiar ache of a life lived for everyone but yourself. The alarm hasn't even sounded, yet your body knows. It knows that in 30 minutes, you will smile at your reflection and practice the voice you will use today, the one that says, "Of course," when you mean absolutely not, the one that chirps, "No problem," when the problem is slowly killing you from the inside out. You lie there in the gray hour before performance begins, and you feel it, the exhaustion that no amount of sleep can cure, the bone-deep weariness that comes not from doing too much, but from being too little of yourself, too little truth, too little of what actually lives in your heart when no one is watching, when no one needs anything from you, when you are allowed to simply exist without serving. Another day of saying yes when you mean no. The thought arrives like an old friend you've been avoiding. You know its face well by now, this recognition that somewhere along the way, your natural impulses became the enemy. Your authentic responses became problems to be solved. Your real feelings became inconveniences to be managed. When did, "How are you?" stop being a question you could answer honestly? When did your actual state of being become irrelevant to the conversation? When did you learn to translate your truth into what others wanted to hear? Until the translation became so automatic you forgot the original language. You smile when you want to scream. This is the mantra of your days now. The quiet violence you commit against yourself, over and over, interaction after interaction. Someone asks for more of your time, and you smile while your body contracts in protest. Someone criticizes your work, and you nod agreeably while your soul recoils. Someone dismisses your needs, and you laugh it off while something precious inside you withers a little more. You have become fluent in the language of self-betrayal. You speak it so well that even you believe the fiction that this is what good people do, that this is what love looks like, that this endless accommodation, this perpetual self-editing, this careful calibration of your being to match the comfort level of others is virtue. But here, in this honest hour before the world demands your performance, you feel the truth that whispers beneath your practiced kindness. You are disappearing. One polite nod at a time. One swallowed boundary at a time. One betrayal of your own needs at a time. The Romans had a word for this komitas, false courtesy. The smile that costs you your soul. Marcus Aurelius wrote about it in his private thoughts, the ones never meant for our eyes, the midnight confessions of an emperor who understood the difference between genuine virtue and its hollow imitation. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be, he reminded himself in those dawn hours not so different from this one. Be one. Be one. Not perform one. Not pretend to be one. Not exhaust yourself trying to convince others that you are one. Simply be one. But what does it mean to be good when everything you've learned about goodness requires the slow suicide of your authentic self? What does it mean to be kind when your kindness has become a weapon turned against your own heart? You have mastered the art of invisible suffering. You have learned to carry your pain so gracefully that others mistake your endurance for contentment. You have become so skilled at managing the emotional climate around you that you've forgotten what your own weather feels like. The exhaustion lives in your shoulders now, a permanent resident that no massage can evict. It lives in the way you hold your breath when someone asks something of you, waiting to see if you'll have the courage to say no this time, already knowing you won't. It lives in the space between your last genuine laugh and now, in the growing distance between who you were before you learned that love was earned through service and who you have become, a creature of perpetual accommodation. You are tired of being nice. You are tired of being understanding. You are tired of being the person everyone can count on because you've forgotten how to count on yourself. You are tired of giving and giving and giving, until giving becomes the only way you know how to exist in the world. And beneath the exhaustion, something else stirs. Something that feels dangerous and necessary and long overdue. Resentment. You don't want to name it. This ugly thing growing in the garden of your goodness. You've been taught that resentment is a character flaw, a sign of spiritual immaturity, evidence that you're not as evolved as you pretend to be. But maybe, just maybe, your resentment is not a bug in your system but a feature. Maybe it's your inner wisdom trying to get your attention, trying to tell you something important about the life you're living and the price you're paying for everyone else's comfort. Maybe your resentment is not a sign that you're broken, but a sign that you're finally waking up. The sun begins to climb the horizon, and with it comes the familiar dread. Another day of performance. Another day of carefully managing your expressions, your tone, your responses. Another day of being the version of yourself that makes everyone else feel good while you slowly hollow out from the inside. But something is different this morning. Something has shifted in the gray hour of honest exhaustion. A question begins to form, dangerous and necessary. What if this isn't what kindness actually looks like? What if everything you've learned about goodness has been a beautiful lie designed to keep you small, manageable, endlessly giving? What if the very thing you've been calling virtue is actually its opposite? The alarm sounds, and you rise to meet another day. But the question follows you into the shower, sits with you over coffee, whispers beneath every polite interaction that will define the next 12 hours. What if being good means something entirely different than what you've been taught? What if true kindness requires the very thing you've been trained to avoid? The radical act of honoring your own truth. The day begins, and you carry this dangerous question with you like a secret flame, warm and threatening, and full of the promise that everything might be about to change. The memory arrives uninvited, as they always do. You are 7 years old, standing in the kitchen doorway, watching your mother's face crumple at something your father said. The air feels electric with danger, and you understand with the terrible clarity that only children possess that someone needs to fix this. Someone needs to make it better. So, you do what children do. You become smaller, quieter. You offer your favorite toy, your brightest smile, your sweetest voice. Don't be sad, Mommy. And when she turns to you with grateful eyes, when she gathers you into her arms and calls you her little angel, you learn the most important lesson of your young life. Your worth is measured by your ability to manage other people's pain. This is where it began, not with malice or deliberate cruelty, but with the innocent desperation of a child who couldn't bear to watch the adults in their world struggle. You learned that love was conditional, that acceptance could be earned, that your value lay not in your existence, but in your utility. You became an emotional thermostat, constantly adjusting the temperature of your own being to match the comfort level of those around you. Too much enthusiasm? Turn it down. Too much sadness? Push it away. Too much anger? Dangerous. Unacceptable. A threat to the fragile peace you'd learned to maintain. The adults praised you for being such a good child. Teachers loved your compliance. Friends appreciated your willingness to go along with their plans. Family members relied on your ability to smooth over conflicts, to be the reasonable one, the flexible one, the one who never caused problems. And somewhere in all that praise, somewhere in all that approval, you forgot that you were allowed to have preferences. You forgot that your feelings mattered. You forgot that saying no was not a betrayal of love, but a basic human right. Marcus Aurelius understood this trap, perhaps because he was raised in it. Born into the imperial family, groomed from childhood to be acceptable to senators and citizens, trained to carry the weight of others' expectations on his shoulders. But he wrote in his private journal, in thoughts never meant for public consumption, how much trouble he avoids, who does not look to see what his neighbor says, or does, but only to what he does himself. Your neighbor says you are kind. Your neighbor says you are accommodating. Your neighbor has no idea that your kindness is performance art, carefully choreographed to earn the applause of approval. Your neighbor doesn't know that beneath your agreeable surface lies a person you barely remember, buried under years of conditioning that taught you love was something to be earned rather than something you deserved, simply by existing. The conditioning was thorough, it had to be. Children are naturally selfish and creatures, gloriously focused on their own needs and desires. To transform this natural selfishness into the self-sacrifice our families and society required, the training had to go deep. Deeper than conscious thought, deeper than memory, down into the very bones of your being. You learned that your anger was too much, your sadness was inconvenient, your joy was too loud. Your natural responses were problems to be solved, impulses to be managed, authentic expressions to be carefully edited for public consumption. Good girls don't get angry. Big boys don't cry. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Think of others before yourself. Don't be selfish. Each phrase a tiny chain, binding your authentic self into increasingly smaller spaces. Each correction, a small death of your natural impulses. Each praise for compliance, a nail in the coffin of your autonomous will. You didn't know you were being trained. You thought you were being loved. And in a way, you were, but it was conditional love. Love with strings attached. Love that required the constant performance of acceptable selfhood. The tragedy is not that your caregivers were monsters. Most likely, they were simply passing down the same conditioning they had received, the same lessons that had been carved into their bones by their own well-meaning parents. This is how trauma travels through generations, not always through dramatic abuse, but through the quiet erosion of authentic selfhood in service of social acceptability. You learned that conflict was dangerous. That disappointment was a kind of violence. That saying no was a form of cruelty. You learned to read facial expressions like a survival skill, to detect the slightest shift in tone that might indicate displeasure. You became hypervigilant to the emotional states of others, not out of empathy, but out of self-preservation. Because love, you learned, could be withdrawn. Acceptance could be revoked. Belonging could be lost. And so you developed what psychologists now call a false self, a carefully constructed persona designed to earn approval and avoid rejection. This false self became so convincing, so well practiced, that eventually even you forgot it was a performance. You began to believe that this accommodating, endlessly giving person was who you really were. But the body remembers what the mind forgets. The exhaustion you feel now is your authentic self, buried, but not dead, trying to claw its way back to the surface. The resentment is your natural boundaries, compressed into smaller and smaller spaces, finally pushing back against the weight of others' expectations. Marcus Aurelius wrote about reputation and ego with the clarity of someone who had been offered all the external validation the world could provide, yet still felt empty. Remember that very little disturbs the wise man, for he is not bothered by the vagaries of reputation or status, but you have spent so long being bothered by reputation, so many years crafting your image to match others' expectations, that you've forgotten what it feels like to simply exist without performing. You've forgotten what your own preferences taste like. You've forgotten the sound of your authentic voice. The child in you learned that love was earned through the abandonment of self. The adult in you continues to pay the price over and over, day after day, interaction after interaction for a lesson that was never true. Real love, the kind worth having, doesn't require you to disappear. Real acceptance doesn't demand the sacrifice of your authentic self. Real belonging doesn't cost you your soul. But unlearning decades of conditioning is not a simple matter of intellectual understanding. Your nervous system still believes that authenticity is dangerous. Your body still contracts when you consider disappointing someone. Your heart still races when you think about expressing a preference that might conflict with someone else's desires. The roots of approval-seeking go deep, twisted through your psyche like ivy through a garden wall. But even the deepest roots can be slowly, carefully, lovingly untangled. The question is, are you ready to begin? Are you ready to excavate the authentic self that has been buried under years of performance? Are you ready to disappoint people in service of your own truth? Are you ready to discover what you actually want, beneath all the layers of what you think you should want? The path back to yourself will not be easy. It will require you to question everything you've been taught about goodness and love and worth. It will require you to risk the disapproval you've spent your whole life trying to avoid. But the alternative is the slow death you're already living, the gradual erosion of your authentic self until nothing remains but the hollow shell of someone designed to please others. Your 7-year-old self learned to manage everyone else's emotions because that child couldn't bear to watch the people they loved in pain. But you are not 7 anymore. You have other options now. Other ways of loving that don't require your own self-destruction. It's time to unlearn the lessons that were never true. It's time to remember who you were before you learned to disappear. It's time to come home to yourself. Here is the question that will either free you or break you. Here is the mirror Marcus Aurelius held up to his own soul each morning, the reflection that cuts through every comfortable self-deception and leaves only truth in its wake. Are you kind, or are you afraid? Sit with this for a moment. Don't rush to answer. Don't let your mind immediately construct a defense or rationalization. Let the question land in your body like a stone dropped into still water. Feel the ripples it creates. Are you generous with your time because you genuinely want to help, or because you cannot bear the thought of someone thinking poorly of you? When you listen to your friend's problems for the 3rd time this week, when you nod sympathetically and offer the same reassurances, is it because you care or because their approval has become the oxygen you breathe? Are you agreeable in meetings because you value harmony, or because conflict feels like death? When you swallow your objections, when you smile and nod while decisions are made that you fundamentally disagree with, is it wisdom, or is it the terror of standing alone? Do you say yes to requests because you want to contribute, or because no feels like a word that might cost you love? The distinction matters. It matters more than you know. Because kindness that springs from fear is not kindness at all, it is manipulation disguised as virtue. It is the desperate attempt to control other people's responses to your existence. It is the exhausting performance of goodness in service of your own emotional survival. When you are kind from fear, you are not actually serving the other person. You are serving your own anxiety. You are feeding your own need for approval. You are managing your own terror of rejection, abandonment, conflict, disapproval. The other person becomes a prop in the theater of your own insecurity. This is what Marcus Aurelius called the discipline of perception, learning to see things as they truly are, not as you wish them to be or fear them to be. He wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, but sometimes we suffer more in our desperate attempts to avoid reality than we would if we simply faced it." The reality is this: you have been operating from a place of scarcity, the scarcity of love, of acceptance, of worth. You have been rationing your authenticity because you believe there is not enough approval in the world to sustain you if you show up as you truly are. But the Stoics understood something revolutionary about the nature of control. They divided the world into 2 categories, as clean and simple as breathing. What is up to you, and what is not up to you? Within your control, your thoughts, your choices, your responses, your values, your effort, your authentic expression. This is your sphere of influence. This is where your power actually lives. Outside your control, other people's thoughts, other people's choices, other people's responses, other people's values, other people's effort, how they receive your authentic expression. This is not your domain. This is not your responsibility. This is not your business. The exhaustion you feel is the natural consequence of trying to control what is not yours to control. You have been attempting to manage other people's emotions, to curate their opinions, to choreograph their responses to your existence. You have been playing God with variables that were never yours to influence. This is not kindness. This is the delusion of omnipotence disguised as virtue. When you say yes because you're afraid they'll think you're selfish, you are trying to control their thoughts. When you smile, when you want to cry because you're worried about their comfort, you are trying to control their emotional experience. When you agree with opinions you fundamentally oppose because you're terrified of conflict, you are trying to control their response to your authentic self. None of this is actually in your power. None of this is actually your responsibility. None of this is actually possible. But here's what is possible. You can choose to be authentic and let others choose how to respond. You can express your truth and release attachment to how it's received. You can set boundaries and trust others to manage their own reactions. You can disappoint people and survive their disappointment. This is what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, imagining the worst-case scenario not to create anxiety, but to realize that even the worst case is survivable. What is the actual worst thing that happens if you tell the truth? If you say no? If you express a preference that conflicts with someone else's desires, they might be disappointed, they might be angry, they might withdraw their approval, they might even end the relationship, and you will survive. You will survive their disappointment. You will survive their anger. You will survive the loss of their approval. You will even survive the end of relationships that require your self-betrayal to maintain. But will you survive the continued abandonment of your authentic self? Will you survive another decade of saying yes when you mean no? Will you survive the slow erosion of your soul in service of other people's comfort? This is the question beneath the question. This is the choice that sits at the heart of every moment when you're asked to give more than you want to give, agree to more than feels right, accommodate more than serves your authentic self. The fear tells you that authenticity is dangerous, that your real self is too much, too selfish, too difficult, that love requires performance and acceptance demands self-sacrifice. The fear has been your compass for so long that you've forgotten there might be other ways to navigate. But Marcus Aurelius, who had more power than almost any human who has ever lived, who could have surrounded himself with yes men and sycophants, who could have lived his entire life cushioned by false praise and artificial approval, chose a different path. He chose the difficult discipline of seeing clearly. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, he wrote. But what if your enemy is not another person, but the fear that lives inside you? What if your enemy is the voice that tells you your authentic self is not enough? What if your enemy is the belief that love must be earned through self-erasure? The best revenge against that enemy is not to be like it. The best revenge is to choose truth over comfort, authenticity over approval, integrity over the illusion of safety that comes from perpetual performance. When you are kind from a place of fullness rather than emptiness, from choice rather than compulsion, from strength rather than fear, that kindness has weight, it has substance. It matters because it is freely given, not extracted through emotional manipulation. When you help someone because you genuinely want to help, not because you need their gratitude to feel worthy, that help actually serves them. When you listen because you care, not because you need their approval to feel valuable, that listening creates real connection. When you accommodate others because it aligns with your values, not because you're terrified of their disapproval, that accommodation comes from a place of power rather than powerlessness. The question hangs in the air between you and everything you thought you knew about goodness. Are you kind, or are you afraid? The answer will change everything. Virtue, without wisdom, becomes performance. This is the trap you have been living in, the beautiful prison you have built with your own good intentions. You have been wearing the mask of kindness for so long that you have forgotten what your actual face looks like underneath. The mask is exquisite. You have crafted it carefully over years of practice, painted it with the colors of selflessness and compassion. It fits so perfectly that even you sometimes forget you are wearing it. But masks, no matter how beautiful, are still false faces, and false faces, no matter how well-intentioned, eventually suffocate the soul beneath them. There are two kinds of kindness in this world, and learning to distinguish between them will save your life. The first kind springs from power, from centeredness, from a place of overflow rather than deficit. This kindness chooses when to give and when to withhold, when to help and when to allow others the dignity of solving their own problems. It has boundaries because it understands that boundaryless giving is not sustainable. It can say no because it knows that a no from an authentic place serves everyone better than a yes from resentment. This kindness is rooted in self-respect. It honors the giver as much as the receiver. It recognizes that you cannot pour from an empty cup, that you cannot love others if you have abandoned the practice of loving yourself. This kindness is like a well-tended fire, warm, steady, sustainable, capable of lighting other fires without extinguishing itself. The second kind springs from fear, from the desperate need to be seen as good, acceptable, worthy of love. This kindness gives not from overflow but from emptiness, always hoping that the next act of service will finally fill the void inside. It cannot say no because it has confused its worth with its usefulness. It has no boundaries because it believes that boundaries are selfish, that real love requires unlimited availability. This kindness is rooted in self-abandonment. It serves others at the expense of the self, creating a dynamic that ultimately serves no one. It is like a candle trying to light a storm, flickering desperately against forces too vast for its small flame, eventually guttering out and leaving only darkness. You have been that candle. Brave, well-intentioned, exhausted, trying to illuminate everyone else's path while your own light grows dimmer and dimmer. Believing that martyrdom is love, that self-sacrifice is the highest virtue, that your worth is measured by how much of yourself you can give away. But Marcus Aurelius, who had every reason to believe in the nobility of self-sacrifice, who literally carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders, understood something crucial about sustainable service. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. You have been craving more. More approval, more validation, more evidence that you are worthy of love. And this craving has made you poor in the currency that matters most: authentic self-respect. You have been trying to earn externally what can only be cultivated internally. The mask of virtue is seductive because it offers the illusion of moral superiority. When you are the one who always gives, always accommodates, always puts others first, you get to occupy the high ground of righteousness. You get to be the good one, the noble one, the one who sacrifices for others. This feels better than acknowledging the less flattering truth that your giving is often motivated by your own neediness, your accommodation by your own terror, your service by your own hunger for approval. It is easier to see yourself as virtuous than to see yourself as afraid. But virtue that springs from fear is not virtue at all. It is simply fear wearing a prettier dress. And when you operate from fear, you create exactly what you are trying to avoid. People sense the neediness beneath your generosity. They feel the obligation rather than the gift. They begin to see you not as genuinely caring, but as someone who needs them to need you. This is how the people-pleaser becomes the person everyone takes for granted. This is how the perpetual giver becomes the one whose boundaries are constantly violated. This is how the mask of virtue becomes a target for those who would exploit your inability to say no. You attract what you tolerate. You receive what you think you deserve. And if you think you deserve love only through self-erasure, you will attract relationships that require exactly that. The people who truly care about you, the ones worth keeping in your life, do not want your self-sacrifice. They want your authenticity. They do not want your martyrdom. They want your presence. They do not want you to disappear in service of their needs. They want you to show up as yourself, full and whole and real. But the mask has become so familiar that removing it feels like death. Who will you be without your perpetual agreeableness? What will remain when you stop defining yourself by your usefulness to others? How will people love you if you're not constantly proving your worth through service? These are the questions that keep you trapped behind the mask. But they are the wrong questions. The right questions are these. Who are you when you are not performing? What do you actually want beneath all the layers of what you think you should want? How does it feel in your body when you honor your authentic impulses instead of suppressing them? The mask may have protected you once. In childhood, when authenticity felt too dangerous, when your survival seemed to depend on being acceptable, the mask may have served a purpose. But you are not a child anymore. You have other options now. Other ways of moving through the world that do not require the constant performance of virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like a rocky promontory on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." This is what authentic kindness looks like. Not the frantic wave-making of someone desperate to please, but the steady presence of someone grounded in their own truth. Not the exhausting effort to manage everyone else's emotions, but the quiet strength of someone who knows their own worth. You can be kind without being a doormat. You can be loving without being self-sacrificing. You can be good without being perfect. You can serve others without abandoning yourself. But this requires removing the mask. This requires the terrifying vulnerability of showing up as you actually are, with your preferences and boundaries and authentic responses intact. This requires disappointing people who have grown comfortable with your self-erasure. This requires choosing truth over comfort. integrity over approval, authenticity over the illusion of safety. The mask is beautiful, but it is not you. Beneath it lies your actual face, scarred perhaps, imperfect certainly, but real, in a way that no mask can ever be. This face, your true face, is worthy of love not because it serves others but because it exists. Not because it performs virtue, but because it embodies the irreplaceable truth of who you are. It is time to let it breathe. It is time to let it be seen. It is time to discover what the world looks like when you show up as yourself, instead of as who you think others need you to be. The mask has served its purpose. Now it is time to set it down. The revelation comes slowly, then all at once. Like dawn breaking over a landscape you thought you knew, casting familiar shapes in unfamiliar light. Everything looks different now. Everything feels different. The very foundations of your understanding about goodness and love and worth are shifting beneath your feet. You are sitting in a meeting, nodding along to a decision you fundamentally disagree with, and suddenly you see yourself as if from outside your own body. You see the automatic smile, the careful posture of agreement, the way you have trained your face to show enthusiasm for something that makes your stomach turn. And for the first time, you wonder, who is this person? When did I agree to disappear so completely? Or you are on the phone with a friend who calls only when they need something, listening to the same complaints you have heard a dozen times before, offering the same reassurances that never seem to help. Your responses are so automatic you could deliver them in your sleep. I'm sure it will work out. You're being too hard on yourself. Everything happens for a reason. And suddenly, you hear yourself, really hear yourself, and think, I don't even believe what I'm saying. When did my voice become a recording? Or you are saying yes to another commitment, another obligation, another request for your time and energy, and you feel your body contract in protest. Every cell screams no, but your mouth forms the words, of course, no problem, happy to help. And in that moment, you realize you have become a stranger to yourself. This is the awakening of doubt. Not the cruel doubt that tells you, you're not good enough, but the liberating doubt that questions whether everything you've been taught about goodness is actually true. The doubt that whispers, what if there's another way? What if you've been solving the wrong problem? What if the very thing you've been calling virtue is actually its opposite? The doubt is uncomfortable because it threatens the entire structure you have built your life upon. If your worth is not measured by your usefulness to others, then what is it measured by? If love is not earned through self-sacrifice, then how is it earned? If being good does not require the endless accommodation of others' needs at the expense of your own, then what does being good actually mean? These questions arrive like uninvited guests, disrupting the careful order of your assumptions. They sit at your table and refuse to leave, demanding answers you do not have, challenging beliefs you thought were beyond question. You have spent so many years perfecting the art of giving others what they want that you have forgotten what you want. You have become so skilled at reading other people's needs that you have lost touch with your own. You have practiced self-erasure with such dedication that you no longer remember what self-expression feels like. And now, in this moment of awakening, you are caught between two worlds. The old world, where your value was clear and your purpose was simple: make others comfortable, avoid conflict, earn love through service. And the new world, still taking shape, where your authentic self might actually matter, where your preferences might be valid, where saying no might not be a moral failing. The tension is almost unbearable. Part of you wants to retreat back into the familiar territory of people-pleasing, where at least you knew the rules, even if they were killing you slowly. Part of you wants to burn it all down, to stop accommodating anyone, to swing wildly in the opposite direction, and declare your independence from everyone's expectations. But neither extreme serves you. Neither the martyrdom of endless giving, nor the isolation of total withdrawal leads to the life you actually want to live. Marcus Aurelius faced this same tension, caught between his private wisdom and his public role, between his authentic self and the expectations of an empire. In his private thoughts, he wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate associates you." But he also wrote, The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. What if your enemy is not another person, but the conditioning that has taught you to betray yourself? What if the best revenge against a lifetime of self-abandonment is simply to begin the practice of self-respect? You feel it now, this possibility hovering at the edge of your consciousness. The possibility that you could show up differently, that you could speak your truth and survive the consequences, that you could disappoint people and still be worthy of love, that you could set boundaries and still be a good person. But possibilities are not enough. Insight without action is just another form of procrastination. Understanding without implementation is intellectual entertainment. You can see the cage you have been living in, but seeing it is not the same as stepping out of it. Tomorrow, something will need to change. Tomorrow, you will need to make a choice. Will you continue the exhausting performance of virtue without wisdom? Will you keep wearing the mask that has become too heavy to bear? Will you go on trying to light storms with your small, flickering flame? Or will you begin the difficult, necessary work of becoming who you actually are, beneath all the layers of who you think you should be? The doubt has cracked something open inside you, a space where new possibilities can take root, a space where your authentic self can begin to breathe again, a space where you can start to imagine what your life might look like if you stopped trying to be kind and started trying to be just. Justice. Justitia. The word arrives in your consciousness like a key turning in a lock you didn't know was there. Not kindness as you have known it, the endless accommodation, the self-erasure, the desperate performance of goodness, but justice, the radical act of giving each person exactly what they deserve, including yourself. Justice means boundaries. Justice means authenticity. Justice means saying no when no is the truth living in your body. Justice means disappointing people when disappointing them is the price of your integrity. Justice means recognizing that the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their dependence on your self-betrayal. Tomorrow, you will stop trying to be kind in the way you have learned kindness. You will stop measuring your worth by the comfort level of others. You will stop offering pieces of your soul as payment for acceptance that was never yours to earn. Tomorrow, you will start trying to be just. The sun sets on this day of awakening, and you feel something you haven't felt in years: curiosity about your own life, excitement about the possibility of showing up as yourself, hope that there might be another way to move through the world that doesn't require the constant sacrifice of your authentic self. Tonight, you rest in this knowing. Your exhaustion is not a character flaw. Your resentment is not a moral failing. Your longing for something different is not selfishness. It is your soul calling you home to yourself. Tomorrow, the real work begins. The work of remembering who you were before you learned to disappear. The work of rebuilding a self that can love without self-destruction. The work of discovering what kindness looks like when it emerges from strength rather than fear. Tomorrow, you will begin to live as if your own life matters as much as everyone else's, because it does. Listen. The tent is silent, except for the distant murmur of soldiers settling into sleep. Outside, an empire stretches beyond the horizon, legions under his command, senators awaiting his word, millions of lives hanging in the balance of his decisions. But here, in this small circle of lamplight, Marcus Aurelius sits alone with the only territory that has ever truly belonged to him, his own mind. You are there with him now, in that sacred solitude where power meets powerlessness, where the weight of the world presses against the fragile boundaries of a single human consciousness. Feel the rough wool of the military cloak against your shoulders. Feel the weight of the imperial seal heavy in your palm. Feel the vastness of responsibility that could crush a spirit less disciplined, less prepared for the burden of caring for so many while remaining whole within yourself. This is the paradox he lived every day, commanding legions while learning to command himself, ruling an empire while discovering that the only kingdom that mattered was the one between his ears. In the flickering candlelight, surrounded by maps of territories he controlled and reports of battles he would wage, he turned inward to the only war that ever really counted: the war against his own untrained thoughts, his own undisciplined reactions, his own untested assumptions about what it meant to live well. The universe's transformation. he wrote in the silence of these nights. Our life is what our thoughts make it. You feel this truth settle into your bones now, the way it must have settled into his. That for all the external complexity of your life, the relationships to manage, the expectations to meet, the roles to perform, there is only one place where freedom actually lives. Only one domain where your will is truly sovereign. Only one empire that answers to your command. Your mind. Not your circumstances. Not other people's responses to your choices. Not the approval or disapproval of those around you. Not the comfort or discomfort of your current situation. Your mind, the space where thoughts arise, where judgments form, where meanings are assigned to the endless stream of experiences that make up a human life. Here, in this tent that could be anywhere, that could be the quiet of your own room in the hour before dawn, you begin to understand what Marcus Aurelius discovered in his own solitude. That the person who masters their internal world can remain free no matter what chaos rages in the external one. The emperor who commanded the known world often felt powerless against the tide of circumstances beyond his control. Plagues swept his empire. Wars demanded his attention. Political intrigue threatened his reign. Beloved family members died before their time. But in the sovereignty of his own thoughts, in the discipline of his own responses, he found a strength that no external force could touch. You close your eyes and feel yourself settling into that same sovereignty. Feel yourself stepping back from the endless chatter of your conditioned mind, the voice that tells you what others think, what you should do, how you should feel, what you owe to whom. Feel yourself finding the space behind that voice, the awareness that watches thoughts arise and pass away like clouds across an empty sky. This is not the numbing escape you might have learned in your desperation to avoid difficult feelings. This is not the spiritual bypassing that pretends pain doesn't exist. This is the fierce clarity that sees everything exactly as it is, while remaining unshaken by what it sees. Marcus Aurelius saw his empire clearly, its beauty and its brutality, its achievements and its failures, its temporary nature and its ultimate insignificance in the vast sweep of cosmic time. But he also saw his own mind clearly, its tendency toward anxiety, its attachment to outcomes, its resistance to change, its hunger for control over things beyond its reach. And in that clear seeing, he found freedom. You are discovering that same freedom now, in the quiet of this visualization, in the solitude of your own inner tent pitched in the wilderness of your daily life. You are learning to distinguish between the storms that rage outside your control and the calm center that remains untouched within you, no matter what weather passes through. The external empire of your life, your job, your relationships, your reputation, your achievements will rise and fall according to forces largely beyond your influence. But the internal empire of your consciousness can remain stable, peaceful, unshaken by the inevitable changes that mark every human existence. This is what Marcus Aurelius mastered in the darkness of his tent, writing by candlelight the thoughts that would guide him through the complexities of the next day. This is what he practiced when faced with betrayal from trusted advisors, when watching friends die in distant campaigns, when feeling the weight of decisions that would affect millions of lives he would never meet. He learned to find his center in the midst of chaos. He learned to remain himself, despite the endless pressure to be what others needed him to be. He learned that true power comes not from controlling external circumstances, but from choosing your response to whatever circumstances arise. You are learning this too, here in the sacred space of your own solitude. You are discovering that the kindness you thought you had to perform, the agreeableness you thought you had to maintain, the endless accommodation you thought was required, none of it was ever necessary for your essential worth or your deepest peace. The emperor who could have had anything chose the discipline of accepting what he could not change while taking full responsibility for what he could. He chose the practice of seeing clearly rather than the comfort of beautiful delusions. He chose the strength of authentic response over the weakness of perpetual reaction. In the growing silence of this moment, you feel yourself choosing the same path. You feel yourself stepping into the sovereignty of your own mind, claiming the throne of your own consciousness, beginning the reign over the only kingdom that has ever truly belonged to you. Tomorrow, you will face the same external challenges that have always tested you. But you will face them from a different place, not from the desperate need to control outcomes, but from the centered strength of someone who knows where their true power lies. The tent grows darker, the empire sleeps, and in the vast quiet of this inner space, you finally come home to yourself. Breathe in. Notice the breath entering your body. Breathe out. Notice the breath leaving your body. And in that simple act of noticing, you begin to glimpse something profound. There is a part of you that stands apart from even the most basic functions of your existence, watching, aware, present to the unfolding of each moment without being consumed by it. This is where the discipline begins. Not with grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but with the radical act of stepping back from the torrent of thoughts that usually carries you along like debris in a flood. The Stoics called this prosouche, attention, mindfulness, the practice of being fully present to what is actually happening, rather than lost in stories about what should be happening. Your mind produces thoughts the way your heart produces beats, the way your lungs produce breath, constantly, automatically, without your conscious direction. Most of these thoughts are not particularly important. Many of them are not even true. Some of them are actively harmful to your well-being. But you have been treating them all as gospel, as commands to be obeyed, as accurate reflections of reality. Marcus Aurelius discovered something that changed everything. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts arise. You are not your emotions. You are the space in which emotions are felt. You are not your mood. You are the judge of your mind. Feel this distinction now. Notice that there is something in you right now that is noticing these words, that is aware of the thoughts arising in response to them, that can observe the feelings generated by this moment of reading or listening. That something, call it consciousness, awareness, the witness. The observer is distinctly different from the content it observes. A thought arises, I should be doing something more productive right now. Notice the thought. Don't judge it, don't engage with it, don't automatically believe it or reject it. Simply observe it the way you might observe a bird flying past your window with interested detachment. The thought is there, and then it passes. Another thought takes its place. This is strange. Notice this thought too. Let it arise, let it exist, let it pass away. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to solve it or fix it or make it go away. You can simply be present to it without being controlled by it. I don't think I'm doing this right. Here comes another one. Same practice. Notice it. Let it be. Let it pass. You are beginning to discover that thoughts are like weather. They arise, they change, they move through the sky of your consciousness without requiring your participation or permission. This is the discipline Marcus Aurelius practiced every morning before rising to face the demands of empire. This simple, radical act of stepping back from the automatic machinery of his conditioned mind and remembering who he actually was beneath all the noise. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he wrote. Realize this, and you will find strength. The power is not in controlling your thoughts. That's impossible and exhausting. The power is in changing your relationship to your thoughts. Instead of being their victim, you become their witness. Instead of being swept away by every mental current, you learn to stand on the shore and watch the waves. A feeling of anxiety arises, maybe about work, maybe about a relationship, maybe about something that might happen in the future. The old you would have immediately engaged with this anxiety, would have started planning and worrying and trying to solve problems that might not even exist. The new you, the you that is learning, this discipline notices the anxiety, the way you might notice tension in your shoulders. It's there. It's information. But it's not an emergency requiring immediate action. My stomach feels tight. Notice this sensation. My breathing is shallow. Notice this too. My mind is spinning stories about worst-case scenarios. Notice the spinning without getting caught in the spin. You are learning to be present to your experience without being overwhelmed by it. The Stoics understood that suffering comes not from what happens to you, but from your judgments about what happens to you. The events themselves are neutral until you assign meaning to them. And you, not your circumstances, not other people, not your past conditioning. You are the one who assigns that meaning. Someone criticizes your work. The event itself is just sound waves in air, pixels on a screen, vibrations reaching your eardrums. Everything else, the story about what it means, the judgment about your worth, the prediction about future consequences, that's all added by your mind. And because your mind added it, your mind can choose a different response. This doesn't mean pretending painful things don't hurt. It means recognizing that you have more choice in how you respond to pain than you've been taught to believe. You can feel hurt without constructing elaborate narratives about why the hurt proves you're worthless. You can experience disappointment without deciding that disappointment means you should give up. You can notice anger without automatically believing that anger justifies retaliation. The discipline of thought is not about achieving some impossible state of constant serenity. Marcus Aurelius struggled with anxiety, frustration, grief, and doubt just like anyone else. The discipline is about developing the capacity to observe these states without being entirely consumed by them, to experience difficult emotions without losing yourself in them. You are sitting here now, practicing this ancient discipline, discovering that there is something in you that remains calm even when your thoughts are agitated, something that stays clear even when your emotions are confused, something that remains free even when your circumstances feel constraining. This something is not separate from you, it is the deepest truth of who you are. Not the role you play, not the story you tell about yourself, not the collection of preferences and aversions and memories that you usually identify as me, but the aware presence that witnesses all of these without being limited by any of them. Marcus Aurelius called this your ruling faculty, the part of you that can observe, evaluate, and choose your response to whatever arises. This faculty is always available to you, always present, always capable of stepping back from the drama of your thoughts and emotions to find the calm center from which wise action emerges. Tomorrow, when someone asks something of you that you don't want to give, you will have a choice. You can react automatically from old patterns of people-pleasing, or you can pause, notice what's happening in your mind and body, and choose your response from a place of centered awareness. Tomorrow, when you feel the familiar anxiety about not being good enough, you can observe that anxiety without being destroyed by it. You can notice the stories your mind tells about your inadequacy without believing them as ultimate truth. You can feel the sensations in your body without interpreting them as evidence of your unworthiness. This is freedom. Not the absence of difficult thoughts and feelings, but the capacity to remain yourself in their presence. Not the elimination of challenge and change, but the development of an unshakable center from which you can meet whatever arises with wisdom rather than reactivity. You are learning to be the sky, not the weather, the ocean, not the waves, the awareness, not the content of awareness. This is the discipline that will transform everything else. The fire burns away everything that is not essential. This is what you have been afraid to understand, what you have spent years trying to avoid, that the very experiences you have been running from are the ones that have been trying to teach you who you truly are. Every disappointment that has shattered your naive expectations, every betrayal that has forced you to question your trust, every failure that has humbled your arrogance, every loss that has broken your heart open, every moment of pain that has stripped away your comfortable illusions about how life should unfold, all of it has been the fire, all of it has been the forge, all of it has been working to burn away the false self that thought it could control outcomes, that believed it could earn love through performance, that imagined safety could be found in the approval of others. Marcus Aurelius understood this alchemy of adversity. The impediment to action advances action, he wrote. What stands in the way becomes the way. What stands in the way becomes the way. Feel these words land in your chest like a key turning in a lock you didn't know existed. Every obstacle you have encountered has not been a deviation from your path, it has been your path. Every challenge that has forced you to dig deeper, reach higher, become stronger than you thought possible, has been an invitation to discover capacities you never knew you possessed. The people who have hurt you taught you about boundaries. The situations that disappointed you taught you about resilience. The failures that humbled you taught you about persistence. The losses that devastated you taught you about the preciousness of what remains. You have been viewing your pain as evidence that something is wrong with your life, when your pain has actually been evidence that your life is working exactly as it should, constantly presenting you with opportunities to grow beyond your current limitations, to transcend your current understanding, to become more than you have ever been before. This is not comfortable wisdom. This is not the gentle philosophy that soothes your wounded ego or validates your victim story. This is the fierce truth that demands everything of you while promising to give you everything in return. This is the fire that burns away who you think you are, so that who you actually are can finally emerge. Think of the moments that have changed you most profoundly. Were they moments of ease and comfort? Were they times when everything went according to plan? When everyone approved of your choices? When life unfolded exactly as you expected it to? Or were they moments of crisis? Times when your carefully constructed world fell apart? Experiences that forced you to question everything you thought you knew about yourself, about others, about how life works? The fire that seemed to destroy was actually creating. The pressure that seemed unbearable was actually forging something stronger. The pain that seemed meaningless was actually the labor of your own transformation. You have been afraid of suffering because you thought it would diminish you. But suffering has been making you larger. Every experience you have survived has expanded your capacity for compassion, deepened your understanding of the human condition, increased your ability to be present with others in their own dark nights of the soul. You have been afraid of failure because you thought it would prove your inadequacy. But failure has been teaching you humility, resilience, the precious knowledge that your worth is not dependent on your achievements. Every time you have fallen and gotten back up, you have discovered that you are stronger than you knew. You have been afraid of rejection because you thought it would confirm your unworthiness. But rejection has been freeing you from the exhausting project of trying to be what others want you to be. Every person who has walked away because you weren't enough for them has made space for someone who can love you as you are. You have been afraid of loss because you thought it would leave you empty. But loss has been teaching you what cannot be taken away: the love that transcends presence, the memories that survive death, the strength that emerges from surviving what you thought would destroy you. The obstacles have not been interruptions to your growth. They have been the very mechanism of your growth. The resistance has not been working against you. It has been working for you. The way resistance in exercise builds muscle, the way pressure creates diamonds, the way fire purifies gold. Marcus Aurelius faced plague and war and betrayal and loss. He buried children and fought enemies and navigated political intrigue that could have cost him everything. But he wrote in his private thoughts, "Confine yourself to the present moment and see how manageable everything becomes." Each challenge, he discovered, was only as large as this moment. Each obstacle was only as insurmountable as his current capacity. And his current capacity, he learned, was always exactly enough for what was actually required of him right now. You are beginning to understand this truth in your own life. The person you are today, with all your scars and wisdom and hard-won understanding, could not have emerged without every single experience that brought you to this moment. The kindness you are learning to offer from strength rather than weakness has been forged in the fire of times when you gave from emptiness and learned the cost. The boundaries you are learning to set have been shaped by all the times your boundaryless giving led to resentment and depletion. The very experiences that seem to be destroying your false kindness have been creating your authentic compassion. The situations that stripped away your people-pleasing persona have been revealing the person you actually are underneath all the performance. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your tendency to say yes when you mean no has been teaching you the value of authentic communication. Your pattern of accommodating others at your own expense has been showing you the importance of self-respect. Your history of seeking approval has been preparing you to find your worth from within. Every obstacle contains its own solution. Every problem carries the seeds of its own resolution. Every experience of limitation reveals where your next growth is meant to occur. The fire is not your enemy. The pressure is not your punishment. The challenge is not your curse. They are your teachers, your allies, your partners in the sacred work of becoming who you were always meant to be. They are the way life loves you, not gently, not comfortably, but completely, demanding nothing less than your full emergence into authentic power. You can stop running from the fire now. You can stop trying to avoid the pressure. You can stop resisting the very experiences that are trying to free you from everything that has been keeping you small. The fire burns, and you discover you are not consumed. The pressure mounts, and you discover you do not break. The challenge intensifies, and you discover capacities you never knew existed. What stands in the way becomes the way. And the way leads home to who you have always been, waiting beneath all the layers of who you thought you had to be. The way leads to the strength that was forged in weakness, the wisdom that was born from confusion, the love that was purified in the fire of learning to love yourself. The way leads to freedom. Close your eyes and imagine the world divided into two perfect halves. On one side, everything you can control. On the other side, everything you cannot. The line between them is clear, absolute, unchanging, like the horizon where sky meets sea, like the moment where day becomes night. This is the fundamental division that will save your life, the recognition that Marcus Aurelius called the foundation of all wisdom. Everything that has ever caused you unnecessary suffering has come from confusing these two realms, from trying to control what belongs to the other side, from neglecting what belongs to yours. Breathe in, and let yourself settle into this visualization. See yourself standing at the center of a great circle, the boundary of your actual influence. Inside this circle, your thoughts, your values, your choices, your responses, your effort, your attention, your words, your actions. This is your domain. This is where your power lives. This is the only place where your will is sovereign. Everything else lies outside this circle. Other people's thoughts about you. Other people's choices in response to yours. The weather, the economy, the past, the future. Whether your effort leads to the outcomes you want, whether your love is returned, whether your work is appreciated, whether your authentic self is accepted, all of it beyond your control, all of it in the other realm, all of it not your responsibility. Feel the relief that comes with this recognition. Feel the weight lifting from your shoulders as you release yourself from the impossible task of managing variables that were never yours to manage. Feel the peace that settles into your nervous system as you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. For years, you have been exhausting yourself trying to influence other people's opinions, to guarantee certain outcomes, to prevent losses, to ensure approval, to avoid disappointment. You have been like someone trying to change the direction of the wind by arguing with it, trying to stop the rain by resenting it, trying to control the sunrise by demanding it. But the wind blows where it will. The rain falls when it falls. The sun rises according to laws far greater than your preferences. And other people think what they think, feel what they feel, choose what they choose according to their own inner weather, their own seasons, their own mysterious rhythms that have nothing to do with your attempts to influence them. Let yourself visualize releasing your grip on all of it. See yourself opening your hands and letting go of the outcomes you've been trying to control. See yourself stepping back from the futile effort to manage other people's responses to your existence. See yourself withdrawing your energy from all the external variables that have been consuming your attention. Your job performance review. Let it go to its proper realm outside your control. You can control the quality of your work, the effort you put in, the attitude you bring to your tasks. But you cannot control how others evaluate that work, what they choose to focus on, what biases they bring to their assessment, your friend's reaction to your new boundaries. Let it go. You can control whether you set the boundary clearly and kindly. You cannot control whether they respect it, understand it, or like it. Their response belongs to them. Your family's approval of your life choices. Release it to where it belongs in their realm, not yours. You can control whether your choices align with your values, whether you live with integrity, whether you honor your authentic path. You cannot control whether others approve of that path, the success or failure of your creative projects. Let it drift to its proper place outside your influence. You can control the love you put into the work, the effort you invest, the courage you bring to the process of creation. You cannot control how the market receives it, whether it finds its audience, whether it achieves the recognition you hope for. Feel yourself breathing more deeply as you practice this release. Feel your nervous system settling as you stop carrying weights that were never yours to carry. Feel the space that opens up in your mind, when you're no longer frantically trying to predict and control external variables. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he wrote, "Confine yourself to the present moment and see how manageable everything becomes." When you focus only on what is actually within your control in this moment, life becomes not just manageable but spacious, clear, simple. In this moment, you can choose your response to whatever is arising. You cannot choose what arises. In this moment, you can decide how to spend your attention. You cannot decide how others spend theirs. In this moment, you can align your actions with your values. You cannot align others' actions with your preferences. This is the lullaby of logic that soothes the frantic mind. You are responsible for your side of every equation. Only your side. Always your side. Never more than your side. Let this rhythm slow your breathing. What's mine to control, I'll control fully. What's not mine to control, I'll release completely. What's mine to influence, I'll influence wisely. What's not mine to influence, I'll accept peacefully. You can be kind without controlling whether others receive your kindness gracefully. You can be authentic without managing whether others accept your authenticity comfortably. You can set boundaries without ensuring that others respect those boundaries happily. You can live with integrity without guaranteeing that others understand your choices clearly. Your part is to show up fully to your own life. Their part is to show up fully to theirs. The outcome of this showing up, whether it creates harmony or discord, whether it leads to connection or separation, whether it generates approval or disapproval, belongs to the vast mystery of how individual wills interact, not to your personal sphere of influence. This is perhaps the most radical act of self-respect, refusing to take responsibility for things that are not your responsibility, refusing to carry burdens that are not yours to carry, refusing to solve problems that are not yours to solve. When you try to control what you cannot control, you become powerless in the realm where you actually have power. When you focus entirely on what you can control, you become effective, peaceful, free. Feel yourself sinking deeper into this understanding. Feel it becoming not just an intellectual concept, but a lived reality in your body. Feel your shoulders relaxing as you stop trying to carry the weight of other people's choices. Feel your breath slowing as you release the urgency to manage outcomes beyond your influence. The circle of your actual control is smaller than you thought, but it is also more powerful than you imagined. Within it lies everything you need to live with dignity, integrity, and peace. Within it lies the capacity to respond to whatever arises with wisdom rather than reactivity. Within it lies the freedom to be yourself regardless of external circumstances. Outside it lies everything else vast, mysterious, uncontrollable, not your business. Let it be. Let it unfold according to its own nature. Let others live their lives while you live yours. This is the great simplification. This is the peace that passes understanding. This is the way home to yourself. What's yours is yours. What's not yours is not yours. The line is clear. The choice is simple. The freedom is complete. Rest here in this knowing. Rest in the vast relief of finally understanding what is and is not your job in this life. Rest in the certainty that you are enough for everything that is actually yours to handle, and you are not responsible for everything else. The two realms are clear. Your place is certain. You are free. Something has shifted in your face. You can feel it in the muscles, around your eyes, in the way your mouth naturally wants to curve upward, in the subtle lift of your entire expression. This is not the smile you have practiced in mirrors, the careful arrangement of features designed to signal approachability and compliance. This is something else entirely. This is the smile of someone who has remembered their own power. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this smile, though he never called it that. He wrote about the quiet confidence that comes from knowing where you stand, about the unshakable peace that emerges when you stop trying to be anything other than what you are. He wrote about the freedom that blooms when you finally understand that your worth was never dependent on other people's opinions, your happiness never contingent on external circumstances, your peace never at the mercy of variables beyond your control. Smile not to please. The Stoics might have said if they spoke to you directly, smile because you are free, free from the exhausting performance of perpetual agreeableness, free from the impossible task of managing other people's emotions, free from the crushing weight of trying to earn love through self-abandonment, free from the fear that your authentic self is somehow inadequate, somehow too much, somehow not enough. You feel this freedom now like sunlight breaking through clouds that have covered your sky for longer than you can remember. It warms something that has been cold, illuminates something that has been hidden, brings life to something that has been dormant. This is what it feels like to come home to yourself. The person you were yesterday, the one who said yes when they meant no, who smiled when they wanted to cry, who accommodated everyone else's needs while ignoring their own, that person was not wrong. That person was doing their best with the tools they had, operating from lessons learned in childhood about how to survive in a world that felt dangerous and unpredictable. But you are not that person anymore. Or rather, you are that person plus everything you have learned about what it means to live from your center instead of from your edges, to speak from your truth instead of from your fear, to love from overflow instead of from deficit. The smile that plays at the corners of your mouth now is the smile of someone who has discovered that they can disappoint people and still be worthy of love, that they can set boundaries and still be kind, that they can say no and still be good, that they can honor their own needs and still care deeply about others. This is not the smile of someone who has become selfish or cruel or indifferent to the suffering of others. This is the smile of someone who has learned that the most loving thing they can do is to show up as themselves, fully, authentically, unapologetically, rather than as whoever they think others need them to be. When you love from this place, your love has weight. It has substance. It matters because it is chosen rather than compelled, given rather than extracted, offered rather than performed. When you are kind from this place, your kindness emerges from strength rather than weakness, from centeredness rather than desperation, from wisdom rather than fear. You think of the people in your life, and you feel something different toward them now. Not the anxious attachment that disguised itself as love, not the desperate need for their approval that masqueraded as care, but something cleaner, clearer, more spacious. You love them enough to stop enabling their dependence on your self-betrayal. You care about them enough to model what it looks like to honor your own boundaries. You respect them enough to trust them to handle their own emotional responses to your authenticity. This is revolutionary love. Love that refuses to diminish itself for the comfort of others. Love that insists on wholeness rather than fragmentation. Love that serves the highest good rather than the immediate comfort. The smile deepens as you realize how much energy you have been pouring into the impossible project of controlling other people's thoughts and feelings. All that effort, all that anxiety, all that careful calibration of your expressions and responses, and none of it was ever within your power to begin with. You might as well have been trying to control the weather by worrying about it, trying to direct the ocean by pleading with it, trying to manage the sunrise by demanding it. But your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own responses, these have always been yours to direct. Your own values, your own choices, your own boundaries, these have always been within your sphere of influence. Your own authenticity, your own integrity, your own self-respect, these have always been waiting for you to claim them. The Stoics understood that external circumstances are neutral until you assign meaning to them. A rejection is just information until you decide it means you're unworthy. A conflict is just two perspectives meeting until you decide it means you're under attack. A disappointment is just a gap between expectation and reality until you decide it means you're a failure. You are the one who assigns the meaning. You are the one who chooses the interpretation. You are the one who decides whether any given experience makes you larger or smaller, stronger or weaker, more loving or more fearful. This is your power. This is your freedom. This is your responsibility and your gift. The smile that illuminates your face now is the smile of someone who has remembered their own sovereignty, their own authority over the meaning of their own life. It is the smile of someone who has stopped waiting for permission to exist fully, who has stopped apologizing for taking up space, who has stopped dimming their light to avoid making others feel uncomfortable. Marcus Aurelius smiled, this smile in the darkness of his tent, surrounded by the weight of imperial responsibility, knowing that he could rule his inner kingdom even when the outer kingdom was chaos. He smiled when faced with betrayal, because he knew that others' choices could not diminish his own integrity. He smiled when confronted with loss, because he understood that what could be taken away was never his true source of strength. You smile now with the same recognition that your peace does not depend on external approval, that your worth is not determined by your usefulness to others, that your love is not contingent on others' acceptance of that love, that your goodness is not measured by your willingness to disappear for the comfort of others. Tomorrow, you will face the same world you have always faced. But you will face it from a different place, not from the desperate need to earn love through self-abandonment, but from the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own value, not from the frantic effort to control outcomes, but from the centered strength of someone who trusts their ability to respond wisely to whatever arises. Tomorrow, when someone asks something of you that doesn't align with your values, you will smile as you say no. Not the apologetic grimace you used to offer, but the clear, kind smile of someone who knows their own boundaries. Tomorrow, when you feel the impulse to accommodate others at your own expense, you will smile as you choose differently. The gentle smile of someone who has learned that the most loving thing they can do is honor their own truth. This is the Stoic smile. Not the empty grin of someone pretending everything is fine, but the deep contentment of someone who has found their center and learned to live from it. Not the performance of happiness, but the authentic expression of someone who has discovered that they are enough, exactly as they are, without modification or apology or endless accommodation. You are free. Free to be yourself, free to disappoint others, free to say no, free to set boundaries, free to honor your own needs, free to love without self-destruction, free to be kind without self-abandonment, free. And freedom, you discover, is the most beautiful expression of all. If this part got you hooked, hit that subscribe button right now. Sit quietly and imagine a great hall within yourself, a council chamber where the most important conversations of your life take place. The walls are stone, ancient and enduring, lit by torches that cast long shadows across the floor. At the center, a circular table where three aspects of yourself gather to deliberate, to debate, to decide how you will move through the world. This is the parliament of your inner empire, the place where Marcus Aurelius learned to listen to all parts of himself before making any decision that mattered. For he understood what you are beginning to understand, that wisdom comes not from silencing the different voices within you, but from learning to hear them clearly and let them speak their truth without being ruled by any single one. The first to speak is logic, your capacity for reason, for seeing clearly, for understanding cause and effect. Logic sits straight-backed and calm, hands folded, speaking in measured tones that carry the weight of careful consideration. We have been operating from flawed premises. Logic says, voice steady as stone. We have been trying to control variables that are not ours to control. We have been seeking validation from sources that cannot provide lasting worth. We have been solving the wrong problems with inefficient methods. Logic leans forward slightly, the torchlight catching the clarity in ancient eyes. The data is conclusive. When we say yes from fear, we create resentment. When we accommodate others at our own expense, we generate depletion. When we seek approval through self-abandonment, we attract relationships that require exactly that abandonment to continue. A pause, the sound of breath, the flicker of flame. The logical conclusion is clear. We must align our actions with our values rather than with our fears. We must respond to what is actually happening rather than to what we imagine might happen. We must base our decisions on evidence rather than on anxiety. Logic sits back, having spoken its piece with the precision of someone who deals only in facts, only in what can be measured and verified and proven through experience. Now emotion stirs, rising from its chair with the fluid grace of someone who moves through the world feeling everything, absorbing the full spectrum of human experience. Emotion's voice carries music, carries the salt of tears and the warmth of laughter, carries the full range of what it means to be alive in a body that feels. But we are not machines, emotion says, voice rich with the complexity of 1,000 different feelings held simultaneously. We are not calculating devices making decisions based purely on efficiency. We feel love for these people who have asked so much of us. We feel fear of hurting them, of disappointing them, of losing them. Emotion moves closer to the table, hands gesturing as words flow like water over stone. When we imagine setting boundaries, our chest tightens with anxiety. When we think of saying no, our heart races with panic. When we consider prioritizing our own needs, guilt rises like bile in our throat. The voice grows softer now, more vulnerable. These feelings are real. They matter. They carry information about our history, our conditioning, our deep longing to belong and be loved. We cannot simply think our way past them or logic our way through them. They must be felt, honored, understood. Emotion pauses, letting the truth of feeling settle into the stone chamber. But we also cannot be ruled by them. We cannot let fear make all our decisions or let guilt determine all our choices. We can feel the anxiety about setting boundaries while still setting them. We can acknowledge the guilt about prioritizing ourselves while still doing it. A sigh that carries years of held breath, years of suppressed feeling, finally finding voice. We can be afraid and brave at the same time. Now will stands, the aspect of yourself that chooses, that acts, that bridges the gap between understanding and implementation. Will's presence fills the space with quiet authority, with the calm power of someone who has learned to make decisions from a centered place rather than from the chaos of competing impulses. Both of you speak truth, Will says, voice carrying the strength of someone who has learned to honor feeling without being controlled by it, to value logic without being limited by it. Logic, you are right that we must align our actions with our values. Emotion, you are right that we must honor what we feel as we do so. Will moves to the center of the circle, becoming the axis around which the other aspects revolve. But I am the one who chooses. I am the one who decides how we will respond in any given moment. I am the one who takes the clarity logic provides and the information emotion offers and translates them into action. The voice grows stronger, more certain. I choose to set boundaries with compassion for others and respect for ourselves. I choose to say no with kindness while honoring our truth. I choose to disappoint people when disappointment is the price of integrity. Will looks at each of the other aspects in turn. Logic, I will use your clarity to see situations as they really are, rather than as fear tells us they are. Emotion, I will honor your feelings while not allowing them to override our deeper wisdom. Together, we will create responses that serve our highest good and the highest good of others. A silence settles over the council chamber, the silence of alignment, of all parts of yourself moving in the same direction for the first time in longer than you can remember. This is what integration feels like. This is what it means to be whole rather than fragmented, centered rather than scattered, authentic rather than conflicted. Marcus Aurelius held councils like this one every morning before rising to face the demands of empire. He listened to his thoughts, acknowledged his feelings, and then chose his responses from a place of considered wisdom rather than automatic reaction. He understood that leadership, whether of an empire or of a single life, requires the ability to hear all voices while being ruled by none. In your own council chamber, you feel this same integration beginning to take hold. The anxious voice that has driven so many of your decisions is still there, but it no longer sits on the throne. The critical voice that has judged your every impulse is still present, but it no longer wields ultimate authority. The frightened voice that has sought safety through accommodation is still part of the conversation, but it no longer dictates the conclusion. Instead, there is will, calm and centered, making decisions that honor all aspects of your experience while serving your deepest truth. There is the quiet authority of someone who has learned to rule their inner kingdom with the same wisdom Marcus Aurelius brought to ruling Rome, through reason rather than emotion, through principle rather than impulse, through careful consideration rather than automatic reaction. The council is adjourned, but the chamber remains. This place of inner dialogue, of conscious choice-making, of integration rather than fragmentation. Tomorrow, when you face decisions about how to respond to others' requests, you can return here. You can listen to logic's clarity, honor emotion's information, and let will choose your response from a place of centered wisdom. This is self-governance. This is what it means to rule your own life with the same care and consideration you would bring to ruling a kingdom. This is the inner empire that no external force can touch, the sovereignty that no one can take away, the freedom that emerges when all parts of yourself finally work together in service of your authentic truth. The torches burn steadily. The council chamber waits. Your inner empire is ready to be ruled. When you say no with calm, you honor your soul. These words land in your consciousness like stones settling into still water, creating ripples that reach every corner of your understanding about what it means to be good in the world. You have been taught that kindness means saying yes, that love means accommodation, that goodness requires the endless surrender of your own preferences in service of others' comfort. But this teaching has been incomplete, perhaps even backwards. What if the most loving thing you can do is to honor the truth that lives in your body? What if real kindness requires the courage to disappoint people when disappointment is the price of integrity? This is the justice of boundaries, not the harsh, punitive justice of punishment and retribution, but the clean, clear justice of giving each person exactly what they deserve, including yourself. You deserve to have your limits respected. You deserve to have your preferences honored. You deserve to exist in relationships that don't require your self-erasure as the price of admission. And others deserve the gift of your authentic presence rather than the performance of your false accommodation. They deserve to know where you actually stand rather than guessing beneath layers of careful politeness. They deserve the opportunity to love you as you are rather than as you pretend to be. When you say yes because you want to say yes, your yes has meaning. It carries weight. It comes from a place of genuine choice rather than compulsive accommodation. When you say no because no is your truth, your no serves everyone involved. It preserves your energy for the things that matter to you, and it creates space for someone else who might genuinely want to say yes. But learning to say no with calm, this is an art form that requires practice, patience, and a fundamental rewiring of everything you have learned about politeness and kindness. The old way of saying no was apologetic, guilty, filled with elaborate justifications and defensive explanations. I'm so sorry, I wish I could, but I just can't because, followed by a lengthy list of reasons designed to prove that your no was acceptable, that you weren't being selfish, that you still deserved love despite this disappointing limitation. This kind of no actually invites argument. It suggests that your boundary is negotiable, that if someone can just find the right words or apply the right pressure, you might change your mind. It positions your limits as problems to be solved rather than truths to be respected. The new way of saying no is different. It comes from the deep knowing that your boundaries are not up for debate, not because you are rigid or unkind, but because you understand that honoring your own limits is how you maintain the capacity to love others without resentment, to give without depletion, to serve without self-abandonment. No, I'm not available for that. Full stop. No elaborate explanation. No apology for having limits. No justification for honoring your own truth. Just the clear, calm statement of what is so for you in this moment. This kind of no might be initially surprising to people who have grown accustomed to your boundaryless giving. They might push back, might try to convince you, might express disappointment or frustration, but underneath their reaction, something else is happening. They are learning that you are a person with preferences, limits, autonomous will. They are discovering that your yes actually means something because your no is also possible. Marcus Aurelius understood this principle when he wrote about justice as the highest virtue. Justice in the Stoic sense is not about punishment, but about rightness, about giving everyone their due, and what you are due is the same respect for your boundaries that you offer to others. What you are due is the right to exist as yourself without constant modification for others' comfort. When someone asks you to work late again, to take on another project, to cover another shift, and your body contracts with exhaustion, that contraction is information. It is your inner wisdom telling you that you have reached your limit, that saying yes would be a betrayal of your own well-being. Honoring that information is not selfish, it is self-respectful. And self-respect is the foundation of all other virtues. When a friend calls to complain about the same problem for the 20th time, seeking the same reassurance you have offered 19 times before, and you feel the familiar drain of energy, That feeling is your boundary trying to communicate with you. You can listen to it. You can say, with kindness and firmness, I care about you, and I'm not available to discuss this topic anymore tonight. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. This is the loving act of refusing to enable someone's dependence on your emotional labor when that dependence serves neither of you. When family members make requests that violate your values, ask you to participate in dynamics that feel unhealthy, or simply assume your availability without asking, you have the right, the responsibility to say no. Not with anger or resentment, but with the calm authority of someone who knows their own mind. That doesn't work for me. I'm not comfortable with that. I won't be participating in that. These phrases become tools of liberation, ways of honoring your authentic self while maintaining connection with others. The paradox is this: the more clearly you communicate your boundaries, the more space there is for genuine intimacy. When people know where you stand, they can trust your yes. When they understand your limits, they can appreciate your availability. When they experience your authentic self complete with preferences and boundaries and autonomous, they can love you for who you actually are rather than for who you pretend to be. But this requires a fundamental shift in how you understand kindness. Kindness is not the abandonment of self for others. Kindness is the practice of honoring everyone's humanity, including your own. Kindness is treating yourself with the same consideration you offer to others. Kindness is refusing to betray your own truth in service of someone else's comfort. When you say no with calm, you model for others what it looks like to honor their own boundaries. When you respect your own limits, you give permission for others to do the same. When you stop apologizing for having preferences, you create a world where preferences are acceptable, where autonomy is respected, where people can be themselves without constant justification. This is revolutionary. In a culture that teaches people, especially women, especially sensitive people, especially those with caregiving tendencies to prioritize others' needs above their own, the simple act of saying no becomes a radical statement of self-worth. You are not responsible for managing other people's disappointment. You are not required to minimize yourself so others can feel comfortable. You are not obligated to say yes to requests that deplete your soul or violate your values. You are responsible for showing up authentically in your relationships. You are required to honor your own truth with the same respect you offer to others. You are obligated to maintain your own well-being so that you can love from overflow rather than from deficit. When you say no with calm, you honor your soul. You acknowledge that your inner life matters, that your energy is precious, that your peace is worth protecting. You declare that you are not a resource to be consumed but a person to be respected. This is the justice of boundaries. This is kindness rooted in self-respect rather than self-abandonment. This is love that serves everyone involved by refusing to participate in the depletion of anyone, including yourself. Tomorrow, when you feel the familiar pressure to say yes when you mean no, remember this moment. Remember that your calm no is a gift to yourself and to others. Remember that honoring your boundaries is not selfish but sacred. Remember that when you say no with calm, you honor your soul, and your soul, like everyone else's, deserves to be honored. Imagine your mind as a citadel, an ancient fortress built on high ground, surrounded by walls both strong and beautiful. This is not a prison that keeps you trapped inside, but a sanctuary that preserves what is most precious: your peace, your clarity, your authentic self. Marcus Aurelius knew this architecture of the inner life, understood that the strongest people are not those who remain open to every influence, but those who know how to build walls that protect without isolating, that defend without attacking. Close your eyes and see this fortress rising before you. The walls are made of something stronger than stone. They are built from your hard-won wisdom, your carefully cultivated self-knowledge, your growing understanding of what serves your highest good and what does not. These walls have been constructed slowly, deliberately, each block placed with intention, each section reinforced by experience. The foundation is self-respect, deep and unshakable, extending far below the surface where others cannot see it, but you can feel its stability beneath every step you take. Above this foundation rise the walls of discernment, your ability to distinguish between what is yours to carry and what belongs to others, between what deserves your energy and what would drain it needlessly, between what aligns with your values and what would compromise them. At the base of the walls, carved into the stone itself, are the words that have become your motto. Build your walls not to shut out love, but to protect peace. This is the crucial distinction that separates healthy boundaries from defensive barriers. You are not building these walls to keep love away, but to create a space where love can flourish without being contaminated by anxiety, manipulation, or the desperate need for approval. You are not shutting yourself off from connection, but creating conditions where authentic connection becomes possible. Walk through the gates of your citadel now. Feel how substantial they are, how carefully they have been crafted. These gates can open and close according to your will, your wisdom, your assessment of what serves your highest good in any given moment. They are not permanently sealed against the world, but neither do they remain open to every person or influence that might wish to enter. Some people earn access to your inner sanctuary through their consistent respect for your boundaries, their genuine care for your well-being, their ability to love you without requiring your self-abandonment. These people are welcomed through your gates with joy, offered the full hospitality of your authentic presence. Others reveal through their words or actions that they do not respect the sovereignty of your inner kingdom, that they see your boundaries as obstacles to overcome rather than truths to honor, that they relate to you as a resource to be consumed rather than a person to be respected. These people may remain outside your walls not with hostility, but with the calm clarity of someone who knows the difference between love and exploitation. Inside your citadel, notice the architecture of peace. Here is the chamber where your thoughts can unfold without the constant pressure to be acceptable to others. Here is the garden where your feelings can exist in their full complexity, without needing to be managed or minimized for someone else's comfort. Here is the library where your values live, clearly articulated and easily accessible when you need to make decisions. In the center of your fortress stands the Tower of Stillness, the highest point from which you can observe the landscape of your life with perfect clarity. Climb the winding stairs to this place of ultimate perspective. With each step, feel yourself rising above the chaos and complexity of daily existence into the clear air of wisdom. From this vantage point, you can see everything. The people in your life appear as they truly are, not as you wish they were or fear they might be, but as they actually show up in their words and actions. The situations you face reveal their true nature, not filtered through your anxiety or colored by your hopes, but seen with the perfect clarity that comes from sufficient distance. Here in your Tower of Stillness, you can make decisions that serve your authentic self rather than your conditioned patterns. You can respond to requests and demands and invitations from a place of centered wisdom rather than automatic reaction. You can choose who to let through your gates and who to keep outside your walls. This is where Marcus Aurelius came each morning to prepare for the day ahead. In the stillness of his own inner citadel, he reminded himself of what was within his control and what was not, what deserved his attention and what could be safely ignored, how he wanted to show up in the world, regardless of how the world showed up for him. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he would remember. Realize this, and you will find strength. From your Tower of Stillness, you realize this too. The strength that comes from knowing you have a place to retreat to when the world becomes overwhelming. The peace that comes from understanding you are not at the mercy of every opinion, every demand, every emotional manipulation that comes your way. The freedom that emerges when you finally understand that you can love others without giving them unlimited access to your inner world. Your citadel is not a place of hiding, but a place of preparation. You come here not to escape from life, but to gather the strength and the clarity you need to engage with life authentically. You retreat to these walls not because you are afraid of the world, but because you understand that you can serve the world better when you remain connected to your own center. The walls of your fortress are permeable to love, but impermeable to manipulation. They allow connection but prevent exploitation. They welcome genuine care while deflecting attempts to make you responsible for others' emotional states. They are strong enough to protect your peace, yet flexible enough to allow for authentic intimacy. When someone approaches your citadel with respect, curiosity, genuine care for your well-being, the gates open easily. When someone approaches with demands, expectations, attempts to guilt or manipulate or control, the walls hold firm, not with anger or aggression, but with the calm strength of stone that knows its purpose. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship. You are the guardian of your own inner kingdom, responsible for maintaining conditions that allow your authentic self to thrive. You are the keeper of your own peace, tasked with protecting what is most sacred within you from forces that would disturb or destroy it. From your tower of stillness, you can see that this protection serves everyone. When you maintain your center, you can love others without resentment. When you preserve your peace, you can offer genuine presence instead of anxious accommodation. When you honor your own boundaries, you model for others what healthy self-respect looks like. The sun begins to set over your inner landscape, casting long shadows across the walls of your citadel. You feel yourself settling deeper into this sanctuary you have built, this place where your authentic self can exist without modification or apology. Tomorrow you will open your gates to the day ahead, but you will do so from this place of strength, this fortress of stillness that no external force can breach. Your walls stand strong. Your peace is protected. Your authentic self has found its home. And from this sanctuary, you can love the world without losing yourself in it. This is the greatest gift your citadel offers, not isolation from others, but the capacity to remain yourself in relationship with them. The fortress of stillness is complete. Your inner empire is secure. You are home. True compassion needs truth. This understanding arrives like light breaking through clouds, illuminating a landscape you thought you knew, but have never seen clearly. For years, you have confused compassion with enabling, empathy with emotional absorption, love with the willingness to be destroyed by others' pain. But Marcus Aurelius, who faced betrayal from his closest allies and still chose mercy over vengeance, understood something you are only now beginning to grasp: that real compassion sometimes requires the courage to disappoint people in service of their highest good. There is a story from the reign of Marcus Aurelius that captures this perfectly. Avidius Cassius, one of his most trusted generals, believing the emperor had died, declared himself ruler and began consolidating power. When Marcus Aurelius, very much alive, learned of this betrayal, his advisors counseled swift and brutal retaliation. Execute the traitor. Make an example that would prevent future rebellions. Show strength through merciless punishment. But the emperor chose a different path. He forgave Cassius personally, understanding that the general had acted from incomplete information and genuine concern for the empire. Yet he also moved decisively to reclaim his authority, not from wounded pride but from his responsibility to maintain order and protect the people under his care. He separated his personal feelings from his public duty, his private mercy from his necessary action. This is compassion without weakness. The ability to understand and forgive while still maintaining appropriate boundaries. The capacity to love someone while refusing to enable their destructive patterns. The wisdom to show mercy without abandoning justice. You are learning this distinction now in the smaller kingdoms of your daily life. When your friend calls again to complain about the same self-created problems, seeking the same reassurance that never seems to help, you face the same choice Marcus Aurelius faced. You can respond from pity, the automatic urge to fix, to rescue, to absorb their pain as if it were your own. Or you can respond from presence, the deeper love that trusts them to handle their own challenges, while offering genuine support that serves their growth rather than their dependence. Pity says, "You poor thing, let me solve this for you." Presence says, "I see you struggling, and I trust your capacity to find your way through this." Pity takes responsibility for outcomes that belong to others. Presence offers support while honoring autonomy. Pity creates dependence. Presence fosters strength. When you respond from pity, you rob others of the opportunity to develop their own resilience, their own problem-solving abilities, their own relationship with difficulty. You become a crutch that actually prevents them from learning to walk on their own. Your help becomes a subtle form of control. Your love, a way of avoiding the discomfort of watching someone you care about struggle. But when you respond from presence, you offer something far more valuable: your faith in their capacity to handle their own life. You provide a calm, steady energy that supports without rescuing, that cares without taking over, that loves without fixing. This is what Marcus Aurelius offered even to those who betrayed him, not the weakness of pretending their actions didn't matter, but the strength of responding from his deepest wisdom rather than his immediate emotional reaction. He could forgive Cassius personally while still taking action to protect the empire. He could understand the general's motivations while still maintaining appropriate consequences. In your own life, this might look like loving your family member who struggles with addiction while refusing to enable their destructive choices. It might mean caring deeply about your friend's depression while declining to take responsibility for managing their emotional state. It might involve supporting your partner's growth while maintaining your own boundaries and needs. True compassion requires the courage to let people experience the natural consequences of their choices. It means resisting the urge to rescue them from difficulties that might actually serve their development. It involves trusting that your love for them is expressed not through endless accommodation but through consistent honesty about what you can and cannot provide. When your colleague asks you to cover their work again because they're going through a difficult time, compassion without weakness might sound like, "I understand you're struggling, and I care about you. I'm not available to take on additional work right now." You can acknowledge their difficulty without making it your responsibility to solve. When your adult child repeatedly asks for money to cover expenses they could manage through better planning, compassion without weakness might look like, "I love you, and I believe in your ability to figure this out." You can express your care without preventing them from learning the skills they need to manage their own life. When your friend consistently cancels plans at the last minute, leaving you scrambling to adjust your schedule, compassion without weakness might involve, "I understand things come up, and I also need to make plans I can count on." Let's talk about how we can handle this differently going forward. This is not cruelty disguised as wisdom. This is the deepest form of love, the kind that trusts people to be capable of growth, that honors their dignity by expecting them to take responsibility for their choices, that serve their highest good, even when that good requires temporary discomfort. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, but sometimes your enemy is your own compulsive need to rescue others from their own experience. Sometimes your enemy is the voice that tells you love means never allowing anyone you care about to feel disappointed, frustrated, or challenged by your boundaries. The best revenge against that enemy is to practice compassion that serves rather than enables, love that strengthens rather than weakens, care that honors rather than diminishes the inherent capacity of others to handle their own lives. This requires a fundamental shift in how you understand your role in other people's lives. You are not responsible for managing their emotions, solving their problems, or protecting them from the natural consequences of their choices. You are responsible for showing up authentically in relationship with them, for offering your genuine care and support, and for maintaining your own well-being so that your love comes from surplus rather than deficit. When you practice compassion without weakness, you model what healthy love looks like. You show others that it's possible to care deeply without losing yourself, to support without enabling, to be present without taking over. You demonstrate that real love trusts people to be capable of handling their own lives while offering genuine support when they ask for it. This is the compassion Marcus Aurelius practiced, firm yet gentle, strong yet kind, clear yet loving. It honors the inherent dignity and capacity of every person while maintaining appropriate boundaries and expectations. It offers the gift of presence without the burden of rescue. It loves without drowning, supports without smothering, cares without controlling. Tomorrow, when you are faced with someone's pain or struggle or request for help, you will have a choice. You can respond from the old pattern of pity, the automatic urge to fix and rescue and absorb, or you can respond from the new understanding of presence, the deeper love that trusts and supports and honors. True compassion needs truth. And the truth is that people are far more capable than your pity assumes, far stronger than your rescuing suggests, far more resilient than your enabling allows them to discover. Your love serves them best when it comes from this truth, when it honors their capacity rather than their limitations, when it supports their growth rather than their dependence. This is compassion without weakness. This is love without losing yourself. This is the way of the emperor who could forgive his enemies while still protecting his empire, who could show mercy while maintaining justice, who could love without abandoning wisdom. This is your way too. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. The same constellations that have watched over emperors and slaves, philosophers and warriors, the wise and the foolish since time began. Marcus Aurelius stands alone beneath this vast ceiling of light. Having dismissed his guards, having set aside the weight of the purple cloak, having stepped away from the endless demands of empire, to remember what he shares with every human who has ever lived and ever will live. You are there with him in this sacred solitude, feeling the cool night air against your skin, hearing the distant sounds of a camp settling into sleep, sensing the profound quiet that comes when a person stands fully present to the mystery of their own brief existence. The emperor who commanded legions now commands only this moment, this breath, this opportunity to remember what matters in the face of the vast indifference of eternity. Remember that you are mortal, he whispers to the darkness, not as a morbid meditation but as the most liberating truth he knows. Death is not the enemy of life, but its greatest teacher, the perspective that puts every conflict into proper scale, every worry into accurate proportion, every moment of beauty into sharp relief. Under these stars, the difference between emperor and citizen disappears. Under this sky, the boundaries between powerful and powerless dissolve. Under this infinity, the urgent concerns of daylight reveal themselves as the temporary fluctuations they have always been, important in their moment, but fleeting in the larger context of cosmic time. You feel this perspective settling into your bones now, this view from the mountaintop of mortality that makes everything else so wonderfully, heartbreakingly small. The argument with your friend that felt so important yesterday, the criticism from your boss that stung so deeply last week, the rejection that shattered your confidence last month, all of it shrinking to its proper size under the immensity of stars that have been burning since before humans learned to speak. This is not nihilism, but its opposite, the profound appreciation that comes from understanding how precious and temporary every experience is. How rare it is to be conscious in a universe that is mostly empty space. How extraordinary it is to feel love in a cosmos that operates primarily through gravity and nuclear fusion. How miraculous it is to make choices in a reality governed mostly by physics and chemistry. Marcus Aurelius knew this wonder, felt it every night when he stepped away from the weight of ruling the known world to remember that he was, fundamentally, just another temporary arrangement of atoms that had somehow achieved the capacity for awareness, for choice, for love. "We are waves on an ocean," he wrote in his private thoughts, appearing for a moment before returning to the hole from which we came. But what a moment! What a gift to appear at all, to experience the texture of existence, to feel joy and sorrow and connection and loss, to make decisions that matter even if they matter only briefly. The stars have witnessed everything. They have watched the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of billions of individuals, the endless human drama of hope and fear, love and loss, triumph and defeat. And still they burn, indifferent to our stories, yet somehow illuminating them, providing the backdrop against which our brief lives unfold with their urgent beauty. You feel yourself relaxing into this perspective, this view from eternity that makes every moment both less important and more precious. Less important because nothing you do will change the fundamental nature of reality, will stop time from flowing, will prevent your own eventual return to the elements from which you came. More precious because this awareness, this capacity to love and choose and create meaning, is so rare and temporary that every instance of it deserves reverence. Under these stars, your struggles with boundaries and authenticity and self-respect take on a different quality. They remain important, they are how you honor the gift of consciousness during your brief time as a wave on the ocean. But they lose their desperate urgency, their life or death intensity, their capacity to convince you that your worth depends on getting them perfectly right. You will make mistakes. You will sometimes say yes when you mean no, will sometimes accommodate others at your own expense, will sometimes forget the wisdom you have worked so hard to cultivate. This is not failure, but part of the human condition, part of what it means to be a temporary, imperfect, beautifully flawed arrangement of matter that has somehow learned to think and feel and choose. Marcus Aurelius made mistakes too. Even with all his wisdom, all his power, all his philosophical training, he sometimes acted from anger rather than principle, sometimes let emotion override reason, sometimes forgot his own teachings in the heat of difficult moments. But he learned to forgive himself for these lapses, to see them as part of the process rather than evidence of fundamental inadequacy. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself, he advised. But even the strictness he recommended was gentle, the firmness of a wise parent rather than the harshness of a cruel judge. He understood that growth happens through practice, not perfection, through gradual improvement rather than sudden transformation. The night deepens around you both, emperor and seeker, separated by centuries, but united in the shared human experience of trying to live well in a world that offers no guarantees, no instruction manual, no clear path to happiness or meaning or peace. All you have is this moment, this breath, this opportunity to choose how you will respond to whatever arises. From this perspective, the choice becomes clearer. You can spend your brief time here trying to control what you cannot control, seeking approval from sources that cannot provide lasting worth, betraying yourself in service of temporary comfort. Or you can use your precious moments to practice authenticity, to cultivate wisdom, to love from fullness rather than emptiness, to honor the gift of consciousness by living as close to your truth as possible. The stars don't care which choice you make. They will continue burning regardless of whether you say yes or no, whether you set boundaries or abandon them, whether you live from fear or from love. But you care. The part of you that is aware of being aware, that can choose between different responses, that can create meaning in a universe that offers none, that part cares deeply about how you spend your time here. Marcus Aurelius turns from the stars to return to his tent, to the few hours of rest, before another day of decisions and challenges and opportunities to practice what he has learned. You turn with him, carrying this cosmic perspective back into the smaller world of human relationships and daily choices, and the ongoing work of becoming who you are meant to be. Tomorrow, the sun will rise on another day of chances to honor your authentic self, to set loving boundaries, to say no with calm when no is your truth, to offer compassion without weakness, to rule your inner empire with the same wisdom Marcus brought to ruling Rome. The stars will fade, but the perspective they have given you will remain, the understanding that your brief time here is both utterly insignificant and completely sacred. Sleep comes gently now, not the exhausted collapse of someone running from themselves, but the peaceful rest of someone who has found their place in the larger story, who knows their worth doesn't depend on perfect performance, who can love others without losing themselves, because they understand that losing themselves would be a disservice to the mystery that brought consciousness into being at all. Under the wheel of stars, all is well. Your inner empire is at peace. You are home in the vast, temporary, beautiful mystery of being human. The night holds you gently. The cosmos cradles your small, significant existence. You rest in the knowledge that you are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you are meant to become. All is well. All has always been well. All will always be well. The stars keep their eternal watch. Your transformation continues in sleep, as in waking. The emperor's night becomes your night, and in this shared solitude under infinite sky, you finally understand what it means to be at peace with yourself. Rest now. Dream the dreams of someone who has found their center. Wake tomorrow as the sovereign of your own inner kingdom, ready to rule with wisdom, compassion, and unshakable calm acceptance of all that is. There is a moment just before dawn when the world holds its breath. When darkness begins to soften at the edges, when the first hint of light touches the horizon, when everything that seemed impossible in the depth of night suddenly becomes possible again. You feel this moment now, not in the external world but in the landscape of your inner life, as something that has been dormant for too long finally begins to stir, to stretch, to remember what it means to be fully alive. This is the morning within. The gradual awakening of your authentic self, after the long night of performing for others, of saying yes when you meant no, of accommodating everyone else's needs while abandoning your own. Light is returning to the places that have been dark. Warmth is flowing back into the parts of yourself that have been frozen in fear, in people-pleasing, in the exhausting effort to be what others needed you to be. Breathe slowly. Feel your chest rising and falling with the natural rhythm that requires no effort, no conscious direction, no performance. This breath belongs entirely to you. No one else can breathe it for you. No one else can determine its pace, or depth, or quality. It is yours, purely and simply yours, the most basic expression of your autonomous existence. In this breath, you remember what it feels like to be present to your own experience, without immediately editing it for someone else's comfort. In this exhale, you release the tension of trying to be acceptable, trying to be enough, trying to earn love through the careful management of your authentic responses. In this inhale, you draw in the possibility of existing exactly as you are, without modification or apology. The clarity that comes with this inner dawn is different from the harsh brightness of artificial illumination. This is the gentle, golden light of understanding that reveals everything in its proper perspective. The relationships that have drained your energy appear as they truly are, not necessarily bad or wrong, but simply misaligned with your authentic needs. The commitments that have felt like burdens reveal themselves as choices you can unmake. The fears that have driven your decisions lose their power in the light of clear seeing. You have been living in a kind of twilight, the gray area between your authentic self and your performed self, never fully in darkness, but never fully in light. This inner dawn illuminates the path between these two worlds, shows you the way back home to yourself. It's not a dramatic journey requiring grand gestures or complete life upheaval. It's more like remembering a language you once spoke fluently, like rediscovering a song you knew by heart but had somehow forgotten how to sing. The morning within brings with it a quality of spaciousness that has been missing from your life. Space between stimulus and response, between what others ask of you and what you choose to give. Space between your immediate emotional reaction and your considered choice about how to proceed. Space between the person you have been and the person you are becoming. In this spaciousness, you can feel your preferences returning. Not the preferences you think you should have, not the ones that would make you look good, or sound enlightened, or seem selfless, but your actual preferences, the ones that arise from your authentic nature, your genuine values, your real sense of what serves your well-being and aligns with your truth. You realize you actually do have opinions about how you spend your time. You do have feelings about how others treat you. You do have boundaries around what you will and will not accept in your relationships. These preferences have been there all along, buried under layers of conditioning that taught you to prioritize everyone else's comfort over your own clarity. The inner dawn reveals these authentic impulses without judgment, without the immediate rush to modify them for social acceptability. Your irritation when someone consistently shows up late is valid information about your values around respect and consideration. Your reluctance to take on another project when you're already overwhelmed is wisdom about your limits, not selfishness requiring correction. Your desire to spend an evening alone instead of attending another social obligation is self-care, not antisocial behavior needing justification. As the light continues to grow stronger, you can see more clearly the difference between being good and performing goodness. Being good flows from your authentic values, honors your genuine care for others while maintaining respect for yourself. Performing goodness requires constant effort, constant vigilance, constant suppression of your natural responses in service of an image that was never truly yours. The morning within shows you that you can be kind without being a doormat, loving without being depleted, helpful without being used. These qualities emerge naturally when you operate from your center rather than from your fear, when you give from fullness rather than emptiness, when you love from choice rather than compulsion. Marcus Aurelius knew this inner dawn, experienced it in his own tent during those quiet hours before the demands of empire called him back to his duties. He understood that true strength comes not from the ability to endure endless demands, but from the wisdom to distinguish between what deserves your energy and what does not, between what aligns with your values and what compromises them. The breath continues, steady and sure, reminding you that you are here, you are present, you are real, in a way that requires no external validation. Your existence is not conditional on your usefulness to others. Your worth is not dependent on your ability to make everyone comfortable. Your value is not determined by how well you can disappear in service of others' needs. This inner dawn brings with it a profound simplicity. Life becomes less complicated when you stop trying to manage variables beyond your control. Relationships become clearer when you show up authentically rather than strategically. Decisions become easier when you consult your actual values rather than your anxiety about how others might respond. The world outside continues its familiar patterns. People will still make requests, will still have opinions about your choices, will still experience their own complex mix of reactions to your presence in their lives. But something fundamental has shifted in how you relate to all of this external activity. You are no longer at the mercy of others' responses to your existence. You are no longer dependent on their approval for your sense of self-worth. This is the freedom that comes with the inner dawn, not freedom from relationship or responsibility, but freedom within them. Freedom to love without losing yourself. Freedom to give without depleting yourself. Freedom to care without drowning in others' emotions. Freedom to be authentic without requiring others' permission. The light grows stronger now, illuminating the path ahead with the clarity you need to walk it. You can see that the journey back to yourself is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you have always been beneath all the layers of accommodation and performance. It's about returning to the natural wisdom that knows the difference between loving others and abandoning yourself, between being helpful and being used, between kindness and codependence. The morning within has arrived. The long night of self-betrayal is ending. The dawn of authentic living is breaking across the horizon of your consciousness, bringing with it the light you need to see your way forward, the warmth you need to feel safe in your own skin, the clarity you need to choose your responses from wisdom rather than fear. Breathe slowly. Feel the light. Welcome the dawn. You are coming home to yourself, and it is beautiful. When you expect nothing, you are free to give everything. This paradox settles into your consciousness like a key finding its lock, opening doors you didn't even know were closed. For so long, your giving has been weighted down by expectation, the hope for gratitude, the need for reciprocation, the desperate desire for proof that your generosity makes you worthy of love. But now, in the clear light of this inner dawn, you discover what it means to love without agenda, to give without attachment, to care without keeping score. This is the weight of nothing, not the emptiness of nihilism, but the profound lightness that comes when you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to bear. The weight of managing other people's responses to your authenticity. The weight of ensuring that your boundaries don't inconvenience anyone. The weight of guaranteeing that your love is returned in the exact measure you offer it. All of this unnecessary weight falls away, leaving you buoyant, free, capable of movement you never imagined possible. Feel this lightness now. Feel yourself released from the gravitational pull of others' expectations, their approval, their comfort with your choices. You are no longer orbiting around their needs, no longer trapped in the exhausting dance of trying to be what they want while maintaining some fragment of yourself. You exist in your own space, under your own power, guided by your own internal compass. Marcus Aurelius understood this freedom, this release from the tyranny of outcome. He wrote, "The cucumber becomes bitter. Throw it away. There are briars in the road. Turn aside from them. This is enough. Do not add, what do such things exist in the world?" He learned to respond to what is without being consumed by resentment about what should be, to act from his values without demanding that reality conform to his preferences. When you stop expecting the world to validate your choices, you become free to make choices that actually serve your highest good. When you stop needing others to understand your boundaries, you become free to set boundaries that actually protect your peace. When you stop requiring gratitude for your efforts, you become free to direct those efforts toward what genuinely matters to you. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or disconnected. Paradoxically, when you release attachment to specific outcomes, You become more present to what is actually happening. When you stop trying to control how others receive your love, you become free to love more authentically. When you cease demanding that your kindness be recognized and appreciated, you become free to be kind in ways that truly serve. The weight of nothing allows you to give everything, not everything you have until you are depleted, but everything that is yours to give without compromising your integrity. You can offer your full presence to a friend without taking responsibility for solving their problems. You can express genuine care for a family member without making their emotional state your responsibility. You can contribute your best effort to a project without needing to control how that effort is received or rewarded. This is love without attachment, service without expectation, care without codependence. It emerges naturally when you understand that your worth is not dependent on external validation, that your peace is not contingent on others' approval, that your integrity is not negotiable, regardless of how others respond to it. Think of a tree growing in a forest. It offers shade without requiring gratitude from those who rest beneath its branches. It provides oxygen without demanding acknowledgement from those who breathe. It gives its gifts freely, according to its nature, without keeping track of what it receives in return. This is the freedom you discover when you stop making your giving conditional on getting, when you cease measuring your worth by others' responses to your presence. The weight of nothing means you no longer collapse under the burden of unreturned phone calls, unacknowledged favors, unappreciated efforts. These things might still sting for a moment. You are human, after all, but they don't carry the crushing significance they once did. They become simply information about others' capacity in the moment, rather than evidence of your inadequacy or proof that you are unloved. When someone doesn't respond to your text message, you notice the silence, without constructing elaborate stories about what it means. When someone forgets your birthday, you feel the disappointment without letting it confirm your fears about being unimportant. When someone takes credit for your work, you observe the injustice without letting it destroy your sense of self-worth. This is the contemplative tempo of a life lived without the frantic energy of constant expectation. You move through your days with the unhurried pace of someone who knows that rushing toward outcomes you cannot control only creates suffering. You respond to requests and opportunities and challenges from a place of centered calm rather than anxious urgency. The weight of nothing allows you to be genuinely curious about others, rather than desperately needing them to be different than they are. You can listen to their stories without immediately trying to fix their problems. You can witness their struggles without making those struggles about your inadequacy as a helper. You can love them exactly as they are, while maintaining clear boundaries around what you will and will not accept in relationship with them. Marcus Aurelius practiced this detachment in the midst of ruling an empire, making decisions that affected millions of lives while understanding that he could not control the ultimate outcomes of those decisions. He could ensure that his choices aligned with his values, but he could not guarantee that those choices would create the results he hoped for. This recognition freed him to act from integrity, rather than from the desperate need to succeed. In your own life, this freedom manifests in countless small ways. You can help a colleague with a project without needing them to reciprocate when you need assistance. You can offer advice to a friend without requiring them to take it. You can express love to family members without demanding that they express it back in the same way. You can contribute to your community without keeping score of what you receive in return. The weight of nothing is not the weight of not caring, but the weight of caring without attachment to specific outcomes. You care deeply about justice while accepting that you cannot control whether justice prevails in every situation. You care passionately about love while understanding that you cannot force others to love you back. You care about excellence while recognizing that your best effort is enough regardless of external recognition. This contemplative approach to life requires patience, practice, the willingness to catch yourself when you slip back into old patterns of expectation and attachment. You might still notice the familiar tightness in your chest when someone doesn't respond as you hoped. You might still feel the old hurt when your efforts go unacknowledged. But now you have another option, the option to notice these feelings without being controlled by them, to feel them without building your life around avoiding them. The breath continues, steady and free, no longer carrying the weight of others' opinions, others' gratitude, others' approval. Each exhale releases another expectation that was weighing you down. Each inhale draws in the lightness of unconditional presence, ungrasping love, authentic service. When you expect nothing, you are free to give everything. Not because you have to, not because others demand it, not because your worth depends on it, but because giving from this place of freedom is the most natural expression of a heart that no longer needs to protect itself through keeping score. This is the weight of nothing lighter than air, stronger than steel, more sustainable than any system built on reciprocal obligation. This is how you love without losing yourself, how you serve without depleting yourself, how you care without destroying yourself. This is freedom. This is peace. This is the way home. Imagine yourself standing in the center of a perfect circle drawn in the sand. This circle represents everything you can actually control in this vast, complex, unpredictable universe. It is smaller than you once thought it was, but infinitely more powerful than you ever imagined. Within this circle lies your true domain, your actual kingdom, the only territory where your will is truly sovereign. The circle is drawn with precision, its boundaries clear and unchanging. Inside, your thoughts, your responses, your choices, your values, your effort, your words, your actions. This is your realm. This is where your power lives. This is the only place where you can guarantee outcomes, where you can determine results, where you can ensure that what happens aligns with what you intend. Outside the circle lies everything else: the weather, the economy, other people's thoughts about you, other people's responses to your choices, the past, the future, whether your love is returned, whether your efforts are appreciated, whether your authenticity is accepted, whether your boundaries are respected. You cannot control others, only your response. This truth has traveled across centuries, passed down from Marcus Aurelius through generations of seekers who have discovered that freedom comes not from expanding your control over external circumstances, but from fully claiming your authority over the one domain that actually belongs to you: your own consciousness, your own choices, your own responses to whatever arises. The story of your transformation is really the story of learning to live within this circle while releasing your desperate grip on everything outside it. For years, you have been exhausting yourself trying to expand the circle, trying to influence variables that were never yours to influence, trying to control outcomes that were never yours to control. You tried to control how others felt about your decisions by making decisions that prioritized their comfort over your truth, but their feelings about your choices remained outside your circle, subject to their own complex inner weather, their own history, their own fears and needs, and unhealed wounds. Your attempts to manage their emotional responses only resulted in betraying your own authentic impulses. You tried to control whether others would love you by becoming whoever you thought they needed you to be. But their love remained outside your circle, influenced by factors you could never access or modify: their capacity for intimacy, their readiness for genuine connection, their own relationship with themselves. Your efforts to earn love through performance only created relationships built on false pretenses. You tried to control outcomes by working harder, giving more, accommodating every request, saying yes to every opportunity. But outcomes remained stubbornly outside your circle, determined by countless variables beyond your influence: market forces, other people's choices, timing, luck, the mysterious interplay of circumstances that no amount of effort can guarantee. The exhaustion you felt was the natural result of trying to do the impossible. You were attempting to exercise sovereignty over territories that did not belong to you, while neglecting the one kingdom that was actually yours to rule. But now you understand. Now you see the circle clearly, its boundaries neither expanding nor contracting but simply there, constant and reliable as gravity. And within this circle, you discover powers you never knew you possessed. You cannot control whether someone appreciates your honesty, but you can control whether you speak truthfully. You cannot control whether someone respects your boundaries, but you can control whether you maintain them. You cannot control whether someone returns your love, but you can control whether you love authentically. You cannot control whether someone accepts your authentic self, but you can control whether you show up as yourself. Marcus Aurelius ruled the known world, Yet he found his greatest power not in commanding legions, but in commanding his own responses to the endless challenges of leadership. When faced with betrayal, he could not control the betrayer's choices, but he could control his own response, choosing wisdom over vengeance, justice over personal revenge, principle over emotion. The circle teaches you that every situation offers you the same choice. Someone criticizes your work unfairly. You cannot control their criticism, but you can control whether you receive it with defensive reactivity or centered calm. Someone makes a request that violates your boundaries. You cannot control their asking, but you can control your response, saying no with clarity and kindness. Someone expresses disappointment in your choices. You cannot control their disappointment, but you can control whether you abandon your authentic path to manage their feelings. This is the story form in which all Stoic teaching ultimately arrives, the recognition that every moment presents you with the opportunity to exercise your true power, the power of conscious response. Not the reactive power that tries to force external circumstances to conform to your preferences, but the responsive power that chooses how to meet whatever arises with wisdom, integrity, love. The circle becomes a meditation, a daily practice, a way of checking in with yourself before making any important decision. When faced with a choice, you ask, what in this situation is actually within my control? Where is my circle of influence, and where am I trying to control what lies outside it? This inquiry transforms everything. Instead of trying to manipulate others into giving you what you need, you focus on meeting your own needs directly. Instead of attempting to guarantee specific outcomes, you concentrate on ensuring that your actions align with your values regardless of results. Instead of working to avoid all discomfort, you develop the capacity to respond to discomfort with grace and wisdom. The paradox is profound. The more you focus on what you can actually control, the more influence you seem to have on what you cannot control. When you stop trying to force others to approve of you and start living from authentic integrity, you often find that the right people are naturally drawn to your genuineness. When you cease attempting to guarantee outcomes and instead commit fully to your effort, you often achieve better results than when you were frantically trying to control every variable. But these side effects are not the point. The point is the peace that comes from operating within your actual sphere of influence, the freedom that emerges from releasing your grip on variables beyond your control, the strength that develops when you consistently exercise your real power rather than depleting yourself through attempts to exercise power you never possessed. Your circle remains constant throughout your life, its boundaries unchanged by circumstances. In times of crisis and times of calm, in moments of success and moments of failure, in seasons of connection and seasons of solitude, the circle is always there, defining the territory where your will is sovereign, where your choices matter, where your power is real and complete. You cannot control others, only your response. But your response, chosen consciously and consistently from your deepest wisdom, is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything you need to live with dignity, integrity, and peace. The circle drawn in sand becomes permanent, etched now in the landscape of your understanding. You know where you stand. You know what belongs to you. You know where your true power lives. And from this knowledge, everything else becomes possible. Not the impossible dream of controlling what cannot be controlled, but the achievable reality of mastering what can be mastered, your own thoughts, your own choices, your own responses to the endless mystery of being human in a world that offers no guarantees. This is your circle. This is your kingdom. This is your way home to yourself. Real kindness has strength in it. This understanding washes over you like sunlight breaking through clouds, illuminating everything you thought you knew about what it means to be good in the world. For so long, you have confused kindness with weakness, love with accommodation, goodness with the endless surrender of your own truth in service of others' comfort. But now you see that what you have been calling kindness was often its opposite, a form of enabling disguised as care, a way of avoiding difficult conversations disguised as compassion, a method of controlling others' responses disguised as love. True kindness is justice. It gives each person exactly what they deserve, including yourself. It honors everyone's humanity, without requiring anyone to diminish themselves for others' comfort. It serves the highest good, rather than the immediate easy, understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is disappoint someone in service of their growth. Feel this new understanding settling into your body like medicine reaching exactly where it needs to go. Kindness is not the frantic accommodation of everyone else's needs at the expense of your own. Kindness is the balanced recognition that your needs matter as much as anyone else's, that your well-being is as important as the well-being of those you care about. This is revolutionary in a culture that has taught you to measure your goodness by your willingness to disappear for others. You have been conditioned to believe that real love requires self-sacrifice, that authentic care means endless availability, that genuine compassion demands the abandonment of your own boundaries and truth. But this teaching has created a world full of exhausted givers and entitled takers, where love becomes a transaction rather than a gift, where kindness becomes a performance rather than an authentic expression. True kindness begins with self-respect. It understands that you cannot love others from an empty cup, cannot serve from a depleted place, cannot give what you do not have. When you honor your own limits, maintain your own well-being, respect your own truth, you create the conditions from which authentic love can flow. When you take care of yourself with the same tenderness you offer to others, you model what healthy self-relationship looks like. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship. You are the guardian of your own energy, the keeper of your own peace, the protector of your own capacity to love. When you abandon these responsibilities in the name of kindness, you actually create more suffering in the world. You become resentful, depleted, unable to offer the genuine presence that others truly need. You teach others that love requires self-betrayal, that care comes through exploitation, that goodness means allowing yourself to be consumed. But when kindness emerges from self-respect, it has a different quality entirely. It is solid rather than desperate, sustainable rather than depleting, authentic rather than performed. It can say no with love, set boundaries with compassion, disappoint people with grace. It understands that sometimes the most caring thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's dependence on your self-abandonment. Marcus Aurelius embodied this understanding in his approach to ruling an empire. He could show mercy to enemies while still maintaining justice. He could feel compassion for those who betrayed him while still taking necessary action to protect the common good. He could love individuals while serving the larger good, understanding that sometimes these loves required difficult choices. You are learning this same balance in the smaller empire of your daily life. You can love your friend while declining to rescue them from the same self-created crisis for the 20th time. You can care about your family member while refusing to take responsibility for managing their emotional state. You can feel compassion for your colleague while maintaining your boundary about working additional hours. This kind of kindness requires courage, the courage to be misunderstood, to be judged, to be seen as less accommodating than you used to be. People who have grown comfortable with your boundaryless giving might resist this change. They might accuse you of becoming selfish, of caring less than you used to, of abandoning your caring nature. But you know better now. You understand that what they are really mourning is the loss of your willingness to betray yourself for their comfort. They are grieving the end of a dynamic that served their immediate needs while slowly destroying your capacity to love authentically. This grief is understandable, but it is not your responsibility to manage. True kindness trusts people to handle their own emotional responses to your authenticity. It refuses to take responsibility for others' feelings while remaining genuinely caring about their well-being. It can witness someone's disappointment in your choices without abandoning those choices. It can acknowledge someone's anger about your boundaries without removing those boundaries. This is presence rather than performance. Instead of frantically trying to make everyone comfortable with your existence, you offer the gift of your authentic self. Instead of exhausting yourself through emotional management, you provide the steady energy of someone who knows their own worth. Instead of accommodating others into resentment, you love them enough to show them what healthy boundaries look like. The warmth in your chest as you embrace this understanding is not the desperate heat of people-pleasing, but the steady warmth of genuine compassion. This warmth includes everyone, including yourself. It recognizes that you, too, deserve kindness, respect, consideration, love. It understands that treating yourself with the same care you offer to others is not selfish but essential. Strength flows through this warmth, not the rigid strength of defensive walls, but the flexible strength of bamboo that bends without breaking. This strength can hold firm to your values while remaining open to genuine connection. It can maintain your boundaries while staying curious about others' experiences. It can disappoint people without becoming cruel, can say no without becoming cold. Compassion infuses this strength, but it is compassion with wisdom rather than compassion without boundaries. This compassion understands that enabling someone's dysfunction is not loving, that rescuing someone from the natural consequences of their choices is not caring, that taking responsibility for someone else's emotional state is not helpful. This compassion trusts people to be capable of growth, resilient enough to handle disappointment, strong enough to solve their own problems. It offers support without taking over, provides comfort without preventing learning, shows care without creating dependence. The emotional high point of this understanding is the recognition that you can be both kind and strong, both loving and boundaried, both caring and self-respecting. These qualities are not in conflict, they support and strengthen each other. Your kindness becomes more authentic when it emerges from strength. Your strength becomes more sustainable when it is infused with genuine care. You realize that everything you thought you had to choose between being good to others or being good to yourself, caring about others or caring about yourself, serving others or serving yourself, were false choices created by a misunderstanding of what love actually requires. Real love does not require anyone to disappear. Real kindness does not demand self-sacrifice. Real compassion does not need martyrdom. These qualities, in their authentic forms, honor everyone involved, serve everyone's highest good, create conditions where everyone can thrive. This is the true meaning of kindness: justice that honors all, balance that serves all, presence that includes all. It is not the performance of goodness but the authentic expression of a heart that has learned to love without losing itself, to give without depleting itself, to care without destroying itself. You are kind. You have always been kind, but now your kindness has roots, has strength, has wisdom. Now it serves everyone it touches, including the person who offers it. This is the kindness the world needs. This is the love that heals. This is the compassion that transforms. This is who you really are, beneath all the performance, beneath all the fear, beneath all the conditioning that taught you to abandon yourself in the name of goodness. Welcome home to your authentic kindness. Welcome home to yourself. The journey is complete. The transformation that began in exhaustion and confusion has found its way to this moment of profound peace. This settling into the truth of who you have always been, beneath all the performance, all the accommodation, all the desperate attempts to earn love through self-abandonment. You can feel it now, this deep rest that comes not from avoiding life's challenges, but from finally understanding your place in relationship to them. Sleep now, sovereign of your mind. Let these words wash over you like warm water, like the gentle tide that carries away everything that no longer serves you. You are the ruler of your own consciousness, the authority over your own responses, the keeper of your own peace. No external circumstance can shake this fundamental truth. No other person's opinion can diminish this essential sovereignty. No challenge can take away this capacity to choose your response from wisdom rather than fear. Your breathing slows naturally, each exhale releasing another layer of the old way of being, the way that measured your worth by your usefulness to others, the way that sought safety through the endless accommodation of others' needs, the way that confused love with self-betrayal, kindness with weakness, goodness with the performance of perpetual agreeableness. All of this dissolves now in the gentle rhythm of breath that belongs entirely to you. No one else can breathe for you. No one else can determine the pace or depth of this most basic expression of your autonomous existence. In this breath, you remember what it means to be present to your own experience without immediately editing it for someone else's comfort. The world cannot shake you anymore. Not because you have become invulnerable to pain or immune to disappointment, but because you have found your center, your unshakable core that remains constant regardless of external weather. From this center, you can feel everything fully: joy and sorrow, connection and loss, success and failure, without being destroyed by any of it. You can remain yourself in the face of others' disapproval, their misunderstanding, their attempts to manipulate you back into old patterns of self-abandonment. The people in your life will adjust to this new version of you, this person who loves without losing themselves, who gives without depleting themselves, who cares without destroying themselves. Some will celebrate your authentic emergence. Others may resist the change, preferring the boundaryless version of you that was easier to take from. But their response is outside your circle of control, and you no longer exhaust yourself trying to manage variables that were never yours to manage. Your breath deepens into the rhythm of someone who has finally come home to themselves. Each inhale draws in the peace of alignment, the relief of no longer having to maintain a performance that was never sustainable. Each exhale releases the tension of trying to be what others needed you to be, the exhaustion of constantly betraying your own truth in service of their comfort. Marcus Aurelius knew this peace, found it in his own tent during those quiet hours when the weight of empire fell away and only the essential remained. He understood that all external circumstances are temporary, that all roles and responsibilities are merely the stage on which you practice the eternal art of responding to life with wisdom, integrity, courage. He wrote by candlelight in those liminal hours between day and night, recording thoughts that were never meant for public consumption, but have nevertheless illuminated the path for countless seekers across centuries. His words echo now in the growing quiet of your mind, a whisper that carries the wisdom of someone who learned to remain centered in the midst of ultimate responsibility. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. This truth settles into your consciousness like ink into water, spreading until it touches every corner of your understanding. For too long, your soul has been dyed with the colors of anxiety about others' approval, fear of disappointment, desperate need for external validation. But now different colors begin to emerge: the deep blue of self-respect, the warm gold of authentic love, the steady green of sustainable giving, the clear white of peaceful acceptance. Your thoughts have been changing throughout this journey, and now your soul reflects that transformation. Where once there was the frenetic energy of people-pleasing, now there is the calm strength of authentic kindness. Where once there was the desperate accommodation of others' needs, now there is the balanced recognition that everyone's needs matter, including your own. Where once there was the exhausting performance of goodness, now there is the natural expression of genuine virtue. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and your thoughts have found their way home to truth, to clarity, to the unshakable, knowing that you are enough exactly as you are, and without modification or apology or endless accommodation. Sleep comes easily now, not the collapse of exhaustion, but the peaceful rest of someone who has finally stopped fighting themselves, stopped betraying their own truth, stopped measuring their worth by their willingness to disappear for others. This sleep is earned, deserved, deeply restorative. In your dreams, you may revisit the person you used to be, the one who said yes when they meant no, who smiled when they wanted to cry, who accommodated everyone else's needs while abandoning their own. But now you see that person with compassion rather than judgment, understanding that they were doing their best with the tools they had, operating from lessons learned in childhood about how to survive in a world that felt dangerous and unpredictable. That person led you here, to this moment of integration, to this understanding of what it means to love without losing yourself. They deserve gratitude, not criticism. Their journey through the wilderness of people-pleasing has brought you home to authentic kindness, sustainable giving, genuine love. The breath slows further, each cycle carrying you deeper into the rest you have earned through this difficult work of becoming yourself. Tomorrow you will wake as someone who knows their own worth, who trusts their own judgment, who can love others without betraying themselves. You will rise as the sovereign of your own mind, the keeper of your own peace, the author of your own authentic responses to whatever the day may bring. Sleep now, sovereign of your mind. The world cannot shake you anymore. You have found your center, your truth, your unshakable core. You have learned the difference between performing goodness and being good, between accommodating others and genuinely loving them, between saying yes from fear and saying yes from choice. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and your thoughts have been transformed by this journey from exhaustion to empowerment, from people-pleasing to authentic presence, from the performance of virtue to its genuine expression. Rest now in the knowing that you are home, that you are enough, that you are exactly who you were always meant to be, beneath all the layers of who you thought you had to be. The transformation is complete. The sage sleeps peacefully, sovereign of their own mind, unshakable in their own truth. All is well. All has always been well. All will always be well. Rest now. Dream the dreams of someone who has found their way home to themselves. Sleep. That's it for today. Make sure you're subscribed for the next wild story.